Yes, there we go. And I'd also like to welcome those viewers at home who are watching the meeting via the live stream. Just a reminder, it remains mandatory for everyone to have signed in using the Safer WA QR code or hard copy register. If I could now ask you all to please be upstanding. And Councillor Proud, would you please read the opening prayer?
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all this in your name. Amen.
If I could ask you to remain standing. Councillor Sundry, if you could please read out the acknowledgement of country.
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation on which this meeting is being held and show our respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you very much. You can take your seats. Please note, without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. That takes us to item 1, which is the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting of the 7th of December 2021 open at 5 p.m. Item 2, apologies. I do have apologies from Councillor Suzanne Migdal and a late apology from Councillor Joe Ferrante. Item 3, approved leave of absence. I have nil. Item 4, disclosure of interest. All the disclosures from Community and Resource Committee meeting and the Planning and Development Committee meeting can be found in the agenda of tonight's meeting and displayed on the screen behind me. For the council meeting of this evening, Councillor Felicity Farrelly disclosed an impartial interest in the Master Plan Scarborough area unless otherwise stated, as she owns property at 32 Scarborough Beach Road and has interest in deceased estate at 23 Brighton Road in Scarborough. Councillors, are there any other disclosures for this evening? No. Councillor Farrelly?
I will be away in January. Is that the time? Sorry, no.
Not yet.
No,
That's fine.
thanks.
Thank you, councillors. There is a lot on the agenda this evening, so if you do see any declarations as we go through the agenda, then make sure you declare it before that item comes up. I will now go to item 5, which is petitions. Item 5.1, there is a petition. I believe, I'm just trying to work out who's presenting that. Who's got that one? Councillor, is the Carnarvon Crescent petition? No, that's all right. Let me just check on this. I believe this is the one. So on behalf of the ward councillors, this has 26 verified signatures. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the council defer the construction of the proposed footpath in Carnarvon Crescent, Coolbinia, from Bradford Street to Elmer Street until the following information has been provided to residents of that section of Carnarvon Crescent and received their feedback. The drawings of the routes that have been considered, showing the number of parks included in each route, the number of driveway crossovers affected by each route, and the estimate of the cost of each of the routes. The residents of this garden suburb have not received any information about the proposed footpath. That is received. And I also have an unverified petition with 600 plus signatures from Mr. Paul Collins. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the council take immediate action to address inadequacies in the performance, maintenance and cleaning of the 2 freestanding stainless steel universal access public toilet modules located at Yokine Reserve between the play space and Coolbinia No. 2 Oval Club Rooms, and the budget to replace existing toilet modules with a purpose-built toilet facility to connect deep sewerage and comparable in standard to that provided at Charles Riley Memorial Reserve, that's gold standard, be implemented. And then it goes on to discuss the problems. Thank you, that's received. Councillors, are there any other unverified petitions that you would like to present? Councillor Ree?
Thank you very much. I have 3 lots of unverified signature petitions, but all relating to the same issue. And what I will do is I will read the petitioner, lead petitioner out, and then the body of the petition, please. So it's 269 signatures from Christopher Woods in Outram Way, Churchlands, from Christopher Meredith, Valencia Avenue, Churchlands, from Mark Pavlich, Lace Park Road in Churchlands. We, the undersigned, object to the proposed Churchlands Green Traffic Management recommendation from the CRC Committee on the 23rd of November 2021 and respectfully request that the Council vote no to ES1 recommendation and instead support option 4 due to the following reasons. The City of Stirling traffic warrant policy was not adhered to in the report. It is not industry best practice to only consider road closures to address traffic issues, parking and congestion. The City of Stirling modelling and their results of closure trials in Churchlands Green show that they have created an increase in traffic on Valencia Avenue and several other local roads such as Luca, Hale and Tuscany. Valencia Avenue residents were not consulted about the knock-on effect of the closure in Churchlands Green and are the most impacted, as this has resulted in an increase of 100% exceeding of allowed traffic volumes per day on this road. Churchlands Estate, Outram Way and other local residents were not consulted about the officers' comments on the road closures in Churchlands Green, as this has increased traffic on Lucas Street, contributing to existing traffic and safety with student parking. The overall City of Stirling's traffic assessment of each of the options impact on the whole of the Churchlands suburb, and the impact of their decision of this closure has not been conveyed or rationalised to the greater Churchlands community. Establishment
Councillor Reid, that's probably enough. It just needs a summary.
I just got 3 more.
Okay.
Establishment of a road between Pearson Street and Empire Avenue and its potential of reducing traffic through Churchlands Green and rat running through Churchland has not been provided as an option by the city staff. The increase in traffic throughout Churchlands is due to many factors such as the expansion of both Newman College, Hale School, the increase in the number of students attending Churchland High School, especially student drivers, the opening of Bob Hawke School to address the local school numbers and the movement of international school of WA from City Beach to Doubleview, the lack of advertising and effective communication by the city to the members of the public that are not on the internet and are not residing in Churchlands Green are being impacted by increased traffic flows by the road closures in Churchlands Green, and finally, the potential knock-on effect on the residents in Outram Way and Lucas Street has not been reported or conveyed to the residents, especially if they've had an increase in traffic, student parking and rat running from road closures in Churchlands Green. So submit.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other unverified petitions? If not, I need a mover and a seconder to accept those. Move Councillor Reid, seconded Councillor Farrelly, just a show of hands to accept, and that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice, and the response to 2 questions that were taken on notice at the 16th of November meeting appear in the agenda. All other questions appear in the minutes. Item 7 now, we'll move on to public question time. We have a significant amount of questions tonight. I'd ask you to try to keep them as brief as possible. We do allow a slight leniency in a brief prelude, but if you can get to a question as soon as possible, that would be appreciated. We do have some separate ones. What I will start with tonight, just in case we do run out of time though, is the questions for those relating specifically to items on the agenda. If we can start with those, because we make sure we can get them out, because they'll be decided tonight. Reshma Raghavani, if you'd like to come forward. And as the first one up, if I can just get you to turn the microphone on the bottom right-hand corner, press that button and the red light should go on, that's it. And we just need your name and suburb only, and then your question, please.
Sure. Reshma Raghavani, Churchland Green. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, fellow Stirling residents. So these 3 questions are pertaining to what Councillor Reid just mentioned. First one is your stakeholder communication policy states that residents will be consulted, especially those who are impacted by the decisions made. Please provide detailed evidence as to how all residents have been impacted by the closure and have been consulted with.
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is unfortunately not practical to directly consult each and every resident and motorist that may be affected by a potential change, and the city's direct consultation has therefore been focused on the residents of Churchlands Green. However, the City has released various news statements, social media posts and website updates during the trials, and articles have also been published in local newspapers. All consultation surveys have been advertised on the City's website and open for all members of the community to participate if they wish. The City therefore considers that it has provided adequate opportunities for any interested parties to learn more about the project and to provide feedback during the trials. This is evidenced by the fact that responses have been received from residents across the City and outside of the Churchlands Green subdivision.
Thank you. Your second question, please.
Sure. Thank you for answering that question. The question was raised at the Resource and Community Committee meeting a few weeks ago on 23rd of November, how long it takes residents from the Green to detour down towards Cromarty, where Churchlands Primary School is, to get back into the Churchlands Greens estate. Given this varies on timings of the day between 10 minutes and 90 seconds, why was the timing of the actual, the factor time of the day not reported in these or any other similar stats?
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you. Look, we appreciate that times would obviously vary. The intent of the response to the question, of course, was to provide an approximate indication of the difference in travel time rather than being a definitive value for all affected properties.
And your third question, please.
Thank you. A question was also asked at the committee meeting, mentioned in question 2, about where the heavy truck traffic is now being rerouted to, if it's now not allegedly accessing the Churchland Greens estate. An answer I recall was not provided for last time, so I would really appreciate an answer right now. Thank you.
Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The heavy vehicle traffic that previously travelled through the Churchlands Green subdivision has been largely redistributed to the surrounding local and district distributor roads, which is where it should be accommodated.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for your time and for your attention.
Thank you. And Christopher Meredith, please. And just your name and suburb, and then your questions.
Christopher Meredith, Valencia Avenue, Churchlands. Councillors, 2 questions. The City of Stirling, this is probably old ground, but the City of Stirling has not consulted any residents on Valencia Avenue about the results of these trials, and it appears as though you may have been hoping to vote this through without us noticing you had doubled our traffic problem, i.e. an increase of 10% to 20%, which is a 100% increase in the exceedance. The question is, why did you not consult any of us when your data showed clearly how closing Pearson into alumni was impacting our traffic volumes? And I'm also wondering why Churchlands Green residents seem to be getting preferential treatment.
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. The residents of Churchlands Green are not getting preferential treatment. An issue was brought to the attention of the City by residents. It was reviewed and quantified, trials to address that issue implemented, an assessment of the outcomes completed by the City, and now Council is considering formalising the solutions. The issue of consultation has been addressed in the preceding question.
And your next question?
Given ES1 clearly has such a big impact on Valencia Avenue residents as well as rat running elsewhere, why has the City of Stirling not considered looking at traffic issues as a whole and come up with solutions that have the most benefit for most people rather than a narrow stopgap for a few residents in Churchlands Green? Surely it's time to think a little broader and about the whole of Churchlands community. Please explain why you would proceed with this option when objectively your own figures indicate it's an action that has such negative impact on so many.
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Yeah, look, thank you. The short answer is, look, we have taken a broad approach. We've assessed traffic in many streets as an outcome of a number of trials that have been implemented. So understanding the broad impacts of the treatments that we've put in place has actually been fundamental and germane to the trial that we've undertaken. The reality is that that Churchlands Green is suffering from a rat running issue and has a high proportion of heavy vehicles, or had a high proportion of heavy vehicles travelling through the estate, and had seen substantial increases over a relatively short period of time. On that basis, we sought to introduce and implement trials that could enable us to understand how we can mitigate those issues without causing more broader issues to the surrounding suburbs. That's the impact of the trial, that's the impact of the assessment. It is very clear in the report what the city has sought to do, and the recommendation for option 1 is therefore substantiated on that basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kirralie Kilbane. Thank you. Just your name and suburb.
Yeah, sure. Kirralie Kilbane, Churchlands. Good afternoon, everyone. I asked you back at the Community and Resource meeting in February this year to please not proceed with this trial closure because I knew that it was going to unnecessarily divide our community, and indeed that's exactly what you've done. Despite asking several times, I'm yet to receive an answer to this question. Why has the city only pursued the trial of road closures when there are several other traffic calming strategies you could try, which you've even told me would reduce traffic by up to 10%, which would suffice given the maximum exceedance of the traumatic rat running is 3%. And also those options are considered industry best practice. They'd also be far less divisive. So I'm just wondering why only road closures? I've asked several times. I do not understand the answer.
Okay. Mr. Giamoff.
Thank you. Through the chair, the city's certainly considered a range of treatments, but many of those treatments will sort of address speeding and crash issues rather than being an effective method of reducing non-local traffic. The traffic volumes within Churchlands Green have been increasing sharply over the last decade. So even if there was, a nominal 10% reduction in traffic, we believe the volume would quickly return because of the trend previously. We believe the volume would quickly return to 3,000 and then even beyond 3,000. So that's why we believe those treatments wouldn't be effective in addressing the core issue, which is rat running.
Thank you.
Okay. Just quoting from your own website, all requests are assessed under the city's traffic management warrants policy. This method is considered to be best practice for determining the need for traffic management measures in a fair and transparent manner. By following a consistent method of assessing road and traffic-related requests, we can ensure that the city's limited funding resources are allocated to the highest priority projects. Again, despite asking several times, I'm still unsure as to why it is best practice, knowing it's best practice to utilise it, you bypassed your own policy, and why your data indicates this trial is simply making a foreseeable issue someone else's problem, and yet you're still spending thousands of dollars to knowingly make it worse for others. Given your priority is about using limited resources for the best, why not put them to the whole community?
Thank you. Mr. Giamoff.
It's important to clarify the city has not bypassed the policy, as we've acknowledged that an assessment under that policy would yield a low score. However, as we've stated previously, a low score under the policy does not preclude the city or council from considering further treatments if they're considered necessary to address the issues which are not always addressed by the traffic management warrants policy.
Okay.
Thank you. And your third?
Mayor Irwin, when you moved the vote at the Community and Resource meeting on the 23rd of November 2021 to make this closure permanent, you said you were moving the motion because it is the best option for the majority of people. I'm just wondering how you know it's the best when you've not trialled what industry considers best, and that this option is clearly not the best for hundreds of other residents that are here tonight, represented here tonight.
Sure. And look, if that's directly to me, I acknowledge that this is being divisive in the community, but I really believe that when this council put a motion for this to go to a trial, that it would be based on evidence and the facts. And I believe that the evidence and the facts that have come about from this trial show that the majority of residents support this, and it is the best outcome. I acknowledge it's not the only outcome, and I acknowledge that some people may be inconvenienced. But we've also got a commitment from this council to continue working with the community and look at how it continues to evolve, because this problem isn't going to go away in the future with the schools increasing populations, and we acknowledge that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rebecca Anderson. Is there Rebecca Anderson? Sometimes we might... Oh, you are coming up. Be aware too, if someone isn't here, it might be because they put their question in previously. That question will still appear on the minutes of this meeting with the answers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Anderson of Churchlands. I appreciate that you discussed your public advertising of the issue already, but your City of Stirling Community and Stakeholder Engagement Policy Principle 4 states that you will actively identify those affected by or interested in a decision and make every effort possible to support and encourage participation in the decision-making process. Given Valencia Avenue residents are most negatively impacted by this closure, why have you bypassed this part of the policy?
Mr. Littleton?
Look, again, what has been clearly demonstrated through the many number of trials that we've undertaken is the local community's propensity to participate in the decision-making process. You state that Valencia Avenue is the most impacted. That is not true. It is acknowledged that there has been a small increase in traffic volume on Valencia.
Come on.
Please.
However, those same volumes, up to 3,500 vehicles a day, have been identified on Valencia since the 1980s. So we don't necessarily believe that that increase is solely attributable to just the impacts of the trial that we're undertaking in Churchlands Green. So let's be clear. Valencia Avenue currently takes, around 3,000 vehicles a day in different sections, but that volume of traffic has been consistently seen in that area over a long period of time, and it is also consistently identified as local traffic. So we would argue that this trial and the impacts of it have been well documented, have been well prosecuted, and this is clearly demonstrating that that everyone is able to contribute to the decision-making process and to be heard.
Thank you.
Valencia Avenue was already 326 cars over design capacity at the start of the most recent Churchlands Green road closure trial, and is now 547 cars, that's a 20% exceedance over because of this closure. In comparison, University Avenue was only ever 94 cars over, 3%, at the beginning of this trial, with no driveways going directly onto the road. In relation to this 3% exceedance, Manager of Infrastructure, Paul Giamov, indicated via email 23rd of September 2021, the City simply cannot ignore concerns raised by residents on that basis, and we're still required to investigate matters appropriately. For many years, the City simply monitored the conditions along this road and did not consider any actions were required, as the volumes of traffic through the estate remained within acceptable limits. However, once the maximum desirable volume for a road is exceeded, the City should at least consider treatments to address the matter. Given you're also on record as stating that all roads need to take their fair share, and you're knowingly making Valencia traffic much worse by increasing our exceedance by 100%, please explain why you're not investigating a much larger traffic issue appropriately.
Okay. Mr. Giamov?
Thank you for the question. I guess there's a number of significant issues to differentiate the issues on Valencia and University. Firstly, the volume on University started from around 800 vehicles per day in 2010, and as I explained in the previous question, they've been steadily increasing by about 200 to 300 vehicles per day. So there has been a sharp increase, and it has been continually increasing every year for more than a decade. And the City, therefore considered that action was required to prevent that going well beyond 3,000 and potentially up to 4,000. In contrast, as has been explained, the historical surveys for Valencia have shown that as far back as the 1980s, the volume of traffic on this road has remained largely unchanged. There has been slight variations, but it has been around that value of 3,300 to 3,500 consistently. And I think, secondly, the probably the other major difference between University and Valencia is that University, both are classified as local access roads. University Avenue is a 6 metre wide, so it's been designed and constrained down to a tight local access road. In contrast, Valencia Avenue, while still being a local access road, it's 7.4 metres wide, and it effectively is built to the same standard as a local distributor road. So the road is actually able to accommodate that traffic a lot more better than University.
Thank you.
Given you're deliberately doubling our traffic exceedance on Valencia Avenue, which is also a local access road with a 3,000 vehicle per day design capacity, what, if any, plans and how soon can Valencia Avenue residents expect to offset the additional 547 daily cars and heavy vehicles over our design capacity that this permanent closure will bring to our front driveways, interfering with our quality of life and our safety as we go about our day-to-day lives?
That's right. Thanks. Mr. Giamoff?
The city will continue to monitor issues in this precinct, and the city would maintain, as I've explained before, that those issues have been largely unchanged since the 1980s. And I think what is also important to recognise is this exceedance above 3,000 vehicles per day, which is what is being maintained as the marker, that value is exceeded for the first 6 properties north of Empire Avenue up to Ailsa. And then north of Ailsa, our traffic volumes, our traffic surveys have shown that the volume of traffic actually reduces significantly north of Ailsa. So for us, that says that traffic is actually from that area of Wembley Downs, who are actually using the most direct route to get to and from their properties, as opposed to the rat running issue that we're seeing on University.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Ray Tan?
Hi everyone, how are you?
Good, thank you. Just your name and your suburb before you sit.
Ray in Churchlands. So my question relates to that survey that you all sent out asking us to vote on which options we would prefer for ES1. And I noticed that there strangely was an option included, option 3, that despite the fact that I was told multiple times down here, multiple occasions, it could not be delivered upon, thereby that option should be rendered void. So when you compare the two options, 31% of residents to 16% want option 1 of no closure. So Mayor, in reference to what you said about a fortnight ago at the community and resource meeting, I believe that's what it's called, why do you think it's statistically sound to merge options 2 and the option 3 that was already undeliverable to get the result of majority? Because I'm really confused when I was voting on that form. I thought we were talking about ES1, so I don't know why that third option was
Sure,
there.
I think the logical conclusion from the survey was that people who would ask for a traffic treatment perhaps voted for both closures, thinking that in the worst case scenario they would get one closure. It would be logical to suggest that all of those people, if they had option 1, would prefer that to having no treatment at all. And I do have to give an extension of time. We have exceeded it, so under our current meeting procedures, local law, I can actually do that. So I'll extend it for the next 30 minutes, and that will hopefully get us through the bulk of these. So I'll now call Gail Connell up, please. Thank you. Just your name and suburb, thanks.
Gail Connell, Churchlands. And in relation to the matter that's been discussed well and truly, but in regards to the traffic alterations in Churchlands Green, has greatly increased the traffic along Valencia and neighbouring streets as well. But particularly in my section of the street and beyond, But now I'm concerned about the safety issues, the noise, the speed limits, the minimalising of traffic flow and accessibility to the properties of residents along that street. How is the council going to deal with this for us?
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, to clarify, the trial will not greatly increase the traffic along Valencia. We've just referenced our statistics in relation to that. The city will obviously continue to monitor traffic volumes in Valencia and surrounding suburbs. We have done so to understand and quantify the issues in Churchlands Green. We will continue to monitor the broad traffic in this area, and we will continue to work through resolutions if and when we quantify issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you.
Well, how will the council address those problems in negotiation and involvement of residents so it's fair and equitable?
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Yeah, thank you. Look, should any future investigations indicate that some resolution or action is necessary, we would go through a similar process that we have today. We would come up with a range of options that we think are suitable. We will engage with the affected community and we will go through work through a process to understand and assess the impacts of any outcome.
Thank you. Paul McGovern.
Paul McGovern from Churchlands Green. My question to the council is this. I'm assuming that the no right turn from Pearson into Alumni Terrace is going to carry. Congratulations, this would decrease the traffic and rat running through the estate somewhat. However, the problem is heavy vehicles turning right from Empire Avenue to University, making their way through the estate still remains an issue, and this is only going to increase when the Stevenson Avenue link opens up. Although you have decreased the traffic somewhat, if a full forward kicks 90 goals in a season and should have kicked 110, has he done his job properly? What do you intend to do with the traffic increases substantially? And also, why did you put option 3, which was to cease both right turns either side of the estate, into the survey when you had no intention of doing anything about it, even though the majority of the residents has voted for option 3?
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. I'm not sure any modern day full forward will kick 110. Look, it was never the city's intention to remove all non-local traffic from the Churchlands Green estate. Rather, our goal was to effectively manage both the rat-running vehicles and limit the proportion of heavy vehicles using the network. Option 1 does that, and it is recommended by both the city and the committee. Both option 3 and 4 remain options for consideration by council this evening.
Okay, my next question is, on a recent trial, the left turn from Alumni into Pearson was closed, although not fully effectively. If this was done correctively, would this not be an option to minimise the heavy traffic coming through the estate from Empire Ave? According to council stats, the heavy coming through the Empire Ave side is approximately 60 vehicles per day on a narrow road not built for this purpose.
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Yeah, thank you. The restriction of left turns from Alumni Terrace into Pearson Street are not supported by the city, as the trial clearly that we undertook, and that was about 12 months ago, clearly demonstrated that this treatment resulted in a high number of illegal movements, which is not supported and not good engineering practice.
Surely if the intersection was modified so they can't do that.
Sorry, sir, it's not for debate tonight.
Yeah, okay.
The councils will debate that later. Alison Bunker.
Alison Bunker, Mount Lawley.
Sorry, Ms Bunker, could you just pull that down a little bit? That's it.
Alison Bunker, Mount Lawley. Bit of a change of theme. I want to talk about the Heritage Advisory Group, which is item 13.1, and the proposal to disband it. Amongst the reasons for disbanding it are that it hasn't done much recently. Although I know that what it can do has been pruned back a lot since 1999, so that's probably why. Stirling has some significant heritage areas within its borders. Regardless of how effective or ineffective the group has been, there is an inherent risk in removing a dedicated advisory group and replacing it with community consultation, including loss of access to expert knowledge. Does the city have currently have a suitably qualified planner, for example, with a qualification in heritage architecture or building conservation?
Mr. Roddich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Ms. Bunker, for the question. The city do have a planner who specialises in heritage assessment. She's a qualified town planner. I don't believe she has an architecture degree.
No, I'm talking about a postgrad planning qualification, I think. Would you be, if you lose the advisory body, if you do make that decision, which I would advise against, but if you did, would you plan to recruit a planner with that extra heritage and conservation knowledge?
Mr. Roddich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll get Ms. Shears to comment on that.
Ms. Shears?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the city engages the advice of external consultants where heritage matters are required. So it's not uncommon for the city to engage a consultant to undertake a specialist piece of heritage for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And of course, that item is on the agenda this evening, so it'll be decided by council. Chris Woods, please.
Chris Woods.
And sorry, sir, I'll just get you to pull the microphone back up a little bit. That's
sorry.
it. That's all right.
Yeah, Chris Woods from Churchlands, Lottram Way. Thanks for hearing our concerns. I have three short questions or comments. Tonight I submitted a petition on behalf of the residents from Lottram Way, and our main concern is actually around the street parking during school times, which is, we're saying, is potentially linked to what's been going on around the Churchlands Green area as well. We're hoping to see or propose that the either 2 or 4 hour parking limit along Lottram Way during school terms. Could you please advise if this could be supported?
Thank you. Mr. Littleton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. Parking issues along roads around Churchlands Senior High School will continue to be monitored to assess the effectiveness of the increased number of bays being provided on Memory Place.
Thank you. As a follow-on from the first question regarding street parking congestion, a number of petition signatories mentioned they would like to see white lines painted on the road to clearly indicate parking spaces on the road. When the street is full, it can be tough entering, exiting our driveways. If someone is parking outside the approximate parking space and over the driveway, it is almost impossible, especially exiting. It is unsafe with visibility limited. Could the council please organise white lines to be painted on Lottram Way, Churchlands, to address this road safety issue?
Mr. Littleton?
Thank you. Look, we can certainly consider painting white lines to formalise legal parking. We'll certainly take that on offline and consider it.
Thank you. On top of the parking concerns, the traffic and rat running, especially around school start-finish times, is very bad in the area. We know that the school student numbers are increasing everywhere around us, and both state and local government have not addressed the increase in parent, teachers, student cars. It is so bad that it has been noticed that buses have started to use Lottram Way as a shortcut, even when it is effectively a single-lane road with the current parking situation. What will the City of Stirling do about buses avoiding Lottram Way, please?
We're happy to take that up with the local member, Mr. Woods. We actually had a meeting last week to discuss the overall precinct in understanding that it is affecting a lot of residents there. So we're happy to take that up.
Thank you for hearing our concerns.
Thank you. Roger Taylor. Good evening.
Roger Taylor, Churchlands. Can you tell me whether there is any present plan or future plan to reduce the traffic on Valencia Avenue? And I ask this question in view of the amount of traffic on Valencia is at times dangerous because there are a large number of driveways that exit onto Valencia. In view of the fact that the amount of traffic on Valencia is above that for a local access road and is above that was observed in Churchlands Green when the present proposal was put forward. So it would seem to me that there needs to be something done about the Churchlands Avenue, Valencia Avenue traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Littleton?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Taylor. Look, we have answered the question in relation to Valencia Avenue, specifically in relation to comparisons since the 1980s of traffic volume in that street. We have indicated that we are happy to continue to monitor the traffic environment in relation to vehicle numbers, speed and safety. But to our understanding, the traffic volumes have remained largely stable, and whilst we understand that there is in excess of 3,500 vehicles in a small section of Valencia, the vast majority is actually well below 3,000.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Helen Aitken?
Helen Aitken, Churchlands Green. I just wanted to say, are councillors aware that the late flurry of objections from Valencia Avenue, I know it probably has been answered quite a bit tonight, but is a complete red herring? The closure of Pearson and alumni does not affect Valencia Avenue one bit. Rat runners are finding the shortest possible route to and from Pearson and Empire Avenue. Now, to believe people are turning right from Pearson into Hale and then going 800 metres out of their way, bypassing Tuscany and the other road, going 800 metres up the road, down Valencia to get to Empire is completely ludicrous.
Thank you. And look, Council is very aware of this item. It has come before Council on numerous occasions. It has been a long-standing. I wouldn't go as far as to agree with you. I have to say that we will obviously take everyone's view into account. We acknowledge, we have meetings with this regularly with our schools. We acknowledge this precinct is going to be an ongoing problem for this council for the foreseeable future, and we'll continue to work with residents for the best outcome for everyone.
Okay. So the City of Stirling has done their due diligence and given the residents in the estate a vote. The vote has been a resounding action to closures. Council can't ignore this. 73% of people voted for one or both closures to be actioned. The numbers speak for themselves. Are Council and councillors now prepared to address the inaccurate use of the figures and move forward and put a stop the continual stalling and put this matter to rest?
Thank you for that question, and obviously that item is on the agenda this evening, and I'm sure you'll find out shortly. Okay.
Does Council have any other plans to keep monitoring the traffic from Empire to Pearson now that Stevenson Avenue extension is nearly open? So the new highway will bring more vehicles onto Pearson Street and through the estate, coming the other way from Empire back to Stevenson.
Thank you. Mr Littleton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. I think we've indicated our intention to continue to monitor the precinct. We appreciate that Stevenson Avenue will be open. However, it will still be some time before Stevenson will be connected all the way through to Cedric Street. So that still is another 2 years away. So that direct connection from the freeway is still some time away. So, look, as I've just said, we will continue to monitor. We have good baseline data now for the traffic to understand any growth and understand any potential issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Jack, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My questions...
Just your name and suburb too.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Alicia
right.
Jack, Karrinyup.
Thank you.
My questions are about the draft economic and tourism strategy that is before you tonight.
Yes.
Question 1. On page 10, officers refer to the International Economic Development Council's definition of economic development, which is economic development is the international practice of improving communities' economic well-being and quality of life. Philip Lowe, the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, says the same thing. The point of improving the economy is to improve the quality of life of citizens. This economic strategy before you is heavily weighted towards fast-tracking more development and construction. Can you please explain how this will improve our community's quality of life?
Mr. Rodich. Mr. Henderson.
Yeah, through the chair, it is heavily developed. It does talk about development, and it talks about development in our areas where we're aiming for urban consolidation and the creation of local employment. It will have significant benefits for the city by reducing the footprint of the whole region, by having urban consolidation, and by reducing the need for people to travel outside of the city for jobs, and reducing, therefore, energy consumption. So, while it's talking about that, it's founded on the basis of a whole strategy for the development of the city, and the basis of that strategy for the development of the city is about sustainable development, urban consolidation, reducing the footprint as the city and the region grows.
Thank you.
We can grow our economy by increasing productivity instead. And tourism has been identified as a huge potential for WA, a huge potential industry for WA. So why doesn't the city have a dedicated tourism strategy like other Perth councils to increase our market share of this lucrative industry?
Sure. Mr. Henderson?
Look, we believe that the economic and tourism development strategy considers all of the options and is, it's the appropriate thing. We don't need a particular strategy, and that hasn't been the direction of the council, so we haven't gone down that path.
And
that's why we haven't got much tourism.
And Mr. Rodich? I'll just get Mr. Rodich.
Thanks, Mayor. Mrs. Jack, we do, as part of the strategy, there are 3 pillars of that, and attracting visitors is one of those, and promoting our destinations within the City of Stirling. So we do recognise that tourism is essential to our strategy, and we do have implementation measures as part of that to, I guess, promote the city's natural areas and the like. Look, I'm privy to some of your points that you've raised with councillors, and I understand that.
Sorry, I ran out of time to get back to you.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Will the council please hold over this item tonight to allow councillors more time to better understand the importance of tourism, of our tourism potential, and the importance of diversifying our economy to make it more resilient?
Thank you for that question, and that item is on the agenda this evening, and I know some councillors have been looking at this today, and it'll certainly be a consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Arthur, Ms. Stillis, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, councillors and staff.
That looks like a big book.
Sorry?
That looks like a big book.
Oh, no, it's only to keep the flies away. I must say that these questions mirror the ones in the petition, Mr. Mayor, so if you don't think I should put them, but I wasn't familiar with the process of how petitions dealt with. So
Sure. Well, they'll certainly form part of the minutes, but rather than go through them again, if we can maybe just give a summary of one. You just want information about Carnarvon Crescent?
Well, they're quite straightforward. It's in respect to the proposed footpath in Carnarvon Crescent, Kilbinia, and will the City of Stirling show residents the drawings, plans of the routes that have been considered?
And the simple answer is yes.
Have they?
No, you asked if we would.
Will the City of Stirling show residents the drawing plans of the routes that have been considered?
Yeah, let me get you an answer, Mr. Jimov. I think yes.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, and thank you for the question, Mr. Mastillis. And I guess to clarify, we did provide copies of the plans for the proposed footpath at our meeting, and we explained that prior to the development of those plans, we went through a detailed process to review which side of the road was the most suitable, and we took into account a range of factors which I won't go into for time reasons, but effectively we determined that the northern side of the road was the most appropriate and optimal side of the road, and for that reason we've only developed the plan for that one side of the road. We didn't think there was any benefit in developing a plan for the southern side of the road when we didn't believe that was a viable option.
Well, the residents have another view, and that's why the petition's there. The other question is that will the plan show the number of parks that will be affected and included and the number of crossover driveways?
Yes, I know that certainly is taken into consideration, but also given that you've put a petition in, look, I'm happy to organise a meeting with the manager and myself, and we can come out and...
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And usually at this time of year I'm attending a ratepayers general meeting, but that's off until next year, so...
Not far away.
I wish you all the best for this year, and thank you for the work you do for the city. I appreciate it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Deirdre Allen. And just your name and suburb, thanks.
Deirdre Allen, Carnarvon Crescent, Corbinia. Lord Mayor, councillors, public gallery, admin staff. Why did I have to find out that the City of Stirling proposed footpaths to Carnarvon Crescent were going to be installed by seeing council workers measuring up for something and ask them what they were doing? When the City of Stirling has a community and stakeholder engagement policy, this has come up a bit tonight in the questions, hasn't it, that says, A, the city is committed to communicating with our diverse community openly to make sure they have the opportunity to participate in the decision-making that impacts them. We believe that those affected by a decision have the right to be involved in the decision-making process. Community and stakeholder engagement may occur on developments and changes with the potential to impact residents and ratepayers. This is impacting me. This will be happening right outside my door. These footpaths have been programmed in to happen for the 2021-22 financial year and for a considerable time before that, and not yet done 6 months into the financial year. So there has been plenty of time to have consulted the affected residents, yet I had to say something in order to get something to happen.
Mr. Jimov.
Thank you for your question. The construction of footpaths across the entire city has been set by a strategic direction from council in 2009, and the city, for that reason, the city doesn't see direct feedback from residents for each individual footpath. However, it's important to note that council's policy was preceded by extensive consultation with the community citywide. And there was strong feedback from the community for the city to construct or provide safe, efficient and effective local transport network, which encourages walking, cycling and public transport. That being said, it's also important to note that residents are provided with a notification of the footpath 2 to 3 weeks prior to construction.
Well, that doesn't satisfy item A, to make sure they have the opportunity to participate in the decision-making that affects them. This is decision-making that affects me. I haven't been given the opportunity to participate, Lord Mayor.
Have you got another question now?
Yes, I have. Is the proposed location of the City of Stirling footpaths to the north side of Carnarvon Crescent appropriate? The construction of 1.8 metre wide concrete footpaths on the north side of Carnarvon Crescent will cut through 31 house driveways, replacing them with concrete and interfere with the verge reticulation. And thanks in this case to councillors Migdale and Ferranti, who actually last Thursday were able to present us with the drawings. That was very good of them at a meeting. Many owners and visitors will then be unable to park on their driveways because it cuts the driveways short by 1.8 metres, and will park on the roadway instead, which they don't do currently, increasing safety risks. The many Queensland box street trees that we have right along the street, on the north side, they're not on the south side, drop seeds, and they're like ball bearings, seriously. So you can slip and slide on them, unsafe for pedestrians, and they will be dropping them on these footpaths. Most of the underground services exist there, and some of the paths are crossing manholes and what have you. And to access other footpaths lower down the hill, walkers on the proposed north side footpath will have to cross the road to all the many streets that will eventually have footpaths that run down the south side. Whereas a footpath on the south side would only traverse 5 property driveways instead of 31, avoid the box trees, connect better with existing and future footpaths, and be predominantly on parks, not interfering with the majority of residents and providing greater park access. I've been told just before this meeting by another member of the public that this actually happened in Menard Crescent.
Sure. Are we getting to a question though?
Well, that's right. Is the proposed location of the City of Stirling footpath to the north side of Carnarvon Crescent appropriate? That was the beginning of my question.
So currently the officer's opinion is that it is, but we are happy, as I said before, if you've put a petition in, we're happy to organise myself and the manager to come and meet with you and have a chat.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, it would be very good.
Please,
if
just
would,
Mayor. You don't have to.
If you would do that, that would be
nice promotion at Christmas time.
And my third question, regarding the City of Stirling proposed footpaths again, I asked generally, in whatever location, how a large, wide, now they were smaller, 1.8 metre, bands of concrete, replacing existing grass, consistent with global warming policies and Cool Cities initiatives, and particularly in this heritage area of Coolbilly Manora, Mount Lawley Estates, that has been laid out and planned and designed as a green park-like garden suburb concept.
Yes, and we acknowledge that. Look, Mr. Giamov did mention before, it is a council policy. We have strategies across the city, and the one thing we do know is, everyone wants a safe, accessible network of paths to be able to walk prams, get down. The reality of retrofitting them throughout a city as large as the City of Stirling, it causes conflict, and normally we go through this process, and we're happy to talk to you and work out the best way forward with this.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, please. Mr. Mitchell.
Robert Mitchell, Coroner. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, council officers, fellow ratepayers. I have 3 questions. My first one relates to the council insurance per annum. I ask here, has the City of Stirling the current details of due diligence for council insurance that is carried out by the West Australian Local Government Association? Now, if you have, I wish to view the documents.
Sure. Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mitchell. As you're aware, the City is a member of the WA Local Government Mutual Indemnity Scheme, and that was really as an alternative risk financing model to a contract. The model requires a more binding and lasting undertaking than a contract, and hence the scheme was established by deed rather than a tender process in a contract. Now, the creation of that particular model has been subject to comprehensive due diligence, including through the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. But that's not something that currently the City holds, that due diligence, but I'll certainly contact LGIS and request that information to provide to you.
And then we'll provide it to you in writing, Mr Mitchell.
You'll provide it to me in writing?
Yes. And I can assure you, so
Have-
every local
have
government in
you
Western
got-
Australia is a member of WELGA.
Have
and
you
WELGA
got
own LGIS.
documentation of due diligence for all of the insurance companies that would have applied for a tender put out by the West Australian Local Government Association?
We wouldn't tender out for local government insurance when we own the scheme, which is a mutual, to ensure the ratepayers get the best value for money,
Right.
Mr Mitchell. But we'll provide you the answer in writing.
Can you
Are we on number 2?
direct me and put it in writing what law under the Local Government Act permits you to have this arrangement with the West Australian Local Government Association? Will you give that to me in writing?
Yes, I will,
I
Mr.
want to
Mitchell.
know the section, the clauses, everything.
I'll give it to you, Mr Mitchell.
Thank you.
In your Christmas card.
Okay, beauty. Yeah, question 2. I attended last Thursday, 2nd of December, at a workshop in relation to design of Karrinyup Activity Centre. Now, the layout plan illustrated the preliminary proposals, including showing the City of Stirling Lot 3 Davenport Street, currently accommodating the Karrinyup Library, the Karrinyup Community Centre and adjacent car park and paved courtyard. This site plan illustrated the buildings being demolished and the car park as a basement to a building site on top, and residue illustrated as 2 building sites step back from Davenport Street. Now, knowing the history and the intrigue of this lot site, I asked the question of the presenter: was the lot to be developed or sold? The reply was he had no instructions regarding the proposed illustrations. I can't help but wonder about the continuing secrecy about this lot and its facilities over years. Firstly, change classification from civic to corresponding shopping centre to retail, commercial and residential. Secondly, the City of Stirling either being approached or offering to sell to the owners of the shopping centre. But us ratepayers are not included in the cone of silence. This is not nominated as a community hub. So obviously you're doing something with it, but you won't, as the previous questioner said, inform the ratepayers of what's going on. All we ever get is it's confidential, etc., etc. What's confidential about that?
Nothing.
Good.
So I'll give you the simple answer. This has come up before. I can tell you there is no conspiracy. Mr Mitchell, you have my word in front of all these witnesses. You will be the first to know if we are going to do anything with that site.
You know,
I promise
funny,
you.
Very funny. No,
I'm not being funny,
this has
sir.
been going on for years.
No, you can look for a conspiracy. It's not there.
Yeah, now,
Remember, it's Christmas time,
is,
Mr Mitchell.
following again the cancellation of the ratepayer electors meeting until sometime next year, I believe the reason being that the yearly financial report has not been audited by the Auditor General's Department. Is that correct?
I'll get you a clarification on why. Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr Mitchell. The Office of the Auditor General has been in and has undertaken majority of the review of our financial statements, but they need to complete the review of Mindarie Regional Council before they can finalise ours, and they're still undertaking that piece of work. So we need to wait till Mindarie is finished before they can close out on
So
the City of Stirling.
you are still working on the report?
So we are
The
awaiting
council.
We've finished our statements. We are just waiting on them finalising Mandari Regional Council.
Why does it take so long?
Mr Mitchell, it is an ongoing problem with the Auditor General's office, with all the local governments that they do.
Yeah, I want to get to the next part of what I've got to say.
Mr Mitchell, we are already been going for over an hour. We've answered
Mayor,
all of your questions,
excuse me.
and you've had 4 questions.
No, I haven't. I've had 3. And I haven't been as long as others. Excuse me. I want to ask now,
Respectfully, I'm going to ask you to make it quick.
I have spoken to the Auditor General's Department, and they told me they were under no obligation to do any local government audits before December the 31st. Having that in train, is there any reason why the ratepayers can't have a meeting like they've had for years in between August and November?
Yes, there is. Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Mitchell, the requirement of our annual report is to include the financial statements, which must have the auditor's opinion. So we need to wait for the OAG to finalise their work before we get that opinion, and therefore we need to wait for that to happen before we can hold the EGM.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell. We'll do this offline.
Why does it have to be presented at the ratepayers meeting? Why can't it be a council meeting afterwards?
That's what the electors' general meeting is, a presentation of the annual report and auditor's statements. I can assure you again, there is no conspiracy. We've had an unqualified audit for the last 15 years. I will ask councillors now, we will need an extension of time. Move Councillor Proud, seconded Councillor Reid, just a show of hands. 15 minutes. Thank you. Again, members of the gallery, so these items are not relating to the agenda. If they will appear in the minutes, so if you feel they've already been answered, or you don't need to ask them, or if you do, please keep them brief, because we have got 37 items on the agenda we would like to get through this evening. And I'll ask Pam Laddams to come up, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pam Laddams. I live in Karrinyup, just around the corner from the shopping centre. I just have a few problems with traffic around the centre. I have issues about the traffic. I can't walk to the shopping centre because there's no way to get across the road. The traffic flow south along Smith Street and Karrinyup Road is compromised for vehicles. This is another factor. No, sorry, forget the walking. It's compromised for vehicles turning right at the lights, going down towards the freeway. There are 3 lanes at the lights, 1 turning left, 2 turning right. Unfortunately, Francis Avenue is only 1 lane at Smith Street, and it's impossible to access the 2 right turning lanes at busy times. Is there a plan to include an extra lane on Francis Avenue from Smith Street to Karrinyup Road to allow vehicles to access the 2 right turning lanes?
Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. There are no plans at this stage to provide additional turning lanes on the Francis Avenue approach to Karrinyup Road. There is insufficient space within the road reserve to accommodate additional lanes and still maintain a pedestrian footpath and median which accommodates an informal pedestrian crossing.
Right, well at the moment...
I'm sorry, so this is your second question?
No, I just want to...
So
there is room for another lane.
Yep. Sorry, if I can...
Sorry, but
no,
that didn't answer my question.
I'm sorry, it's not up for debate. What I'm happy to do, though, is, again, we have a significant agenda to get through. I'm happy to organise a meeting for the officer to sit down, and then we can spend as much time as you like discussing this.
There is room to have another lane there. I access it every day.
A question, please.
I've tried to access the Karrinyup Centre entrance on foot across Francis Avenue. Francis Avenue is so busy that it is impossible to cross as the vehicles never stop for pedestrians. Is it possible to have a crossing point across Francis Avenue opposite this entrance to the shopping centre?
Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Informal pedestrian crossing points are provided at numerous locations along Francis Avenue which allow pedestrians to cross the road in 2 stages, accounting for 1 lane of traffic per stage.
Sorry, where are they, so I can use it?
While the city certainly understands the difficulties experienced by pedestrians during peak periods of activity, the number of pedestrians crossing the road would unlikely be high enough to satisfy the main road's WA warrants for a formalised pedestrian crossing.
And your third question?
Okay. There has been many occasions when I cannot access or leave my residence on Hall Street because Karrinyup Road is totally gridlocked, both going east and west. Huntress Road is also very congested and gridlocked by traffic going to the Karrinyup Centre. These problems have only occurred since the shopping centre was renovated. What solutions are available to alleviate this problem, which is only getting worse, which will only get worse when the 3 towers are built?
Thank you. And I can tell you there is a motion coming to council this evening by a councillor to investigate all these and address those concerns.
I'm just saying Francis Avenue is a nightmare. That's me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Arnold Davies.
Arnold Davies, Francis Avenue, Karrinyup. Did the City of Stirling review the previous Commonwealth census information to see how many of their ratepayers were not on the computer before the requirement of them to access some of the services were implemented?
Thank you. Ms Hawkins, is it? Sure. We might have to take that one on notice, if that's all right, Mr Davies, and provide your response.
When will the ratepayers be informed of the outcome of the review which was carried out regarding the or some of the services from the Community Services Department?
Mr Quirk.
Through Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question, Mr Davies. Yes, indeed, the City has already started that process. We have been making a number of changes and improvements to services over the last 3 or 4 months. So happy to confirm in writing exactly what is being proposed and what has already been undertaken.
Yeah, but when will the ratepayers in general know?
Yeah, so through the audit committee process, it comes to council, but some of those have already gone out in press releases that have been.
Thank you. Has the City of Stirling carried out a review on how the operation of a service station at the corner of Karrinyup Road and Francis Avenue will impact the traffic flow along Francis Avenue? A report in the local paper has indicated that all access to the service station will be from Francis Avenue, and Francis Avenue is now becoming a bit of quite a nightmare.
Thank you. Mr Roddish.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks, Mr Davies, for the question. Yes, the City's Infrastructure Services team did review the access to the service station site on the corner of Francis Avenue and Karrinyup Road, most recently as part of the JDAP consideration of that proposal, or that revised proposal of the service station. In that proposal, there are mechanisms to ensure that I guess fuel tankers approach the site from Francis Avenue and exit through Karrinyup Road, but I'm happy to provide you further detail in respect to our assessment of the traffic impacts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Costa Selesky, are you here? Thank you. Your name and suburb, please.
Costa Selesky, Dianella. Good evening, Mayor, councillors. My question is just to change the subject from streets to toilets. I'll be quick. There's been a change of cleaning contractors. I don't know about the other reserves, but I know that where I go at Yukon Reserve, there's been a change of cleaning contractors. Okay.
Yes. Across the city, there has, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is really simple. Do contractors engaged by the City to clean public toilets on City reserves have to meet performance indicators, which City Department monitors these indicators, and how often are spot checks on performance carried out?
Yes. Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. Yes, the short answer is yes, there are standards of cleaning and performance. Our facilities, projects and assets business unit manages the cleaning contract citywide, and its staff manage performance and conduct regular inspections to ensure that that cleaning is being done to a standard.
So I can go to the other two questions, but I can stop there if you want, because I'm a contractor, and I've got obligations to my contractors above and to my clients, and I can tell you whoever's in charge of that job is not doing the job.
Thank you. Yeah, we're aware of it, Mr. Selesky.
Huh?
We are aware of it, and we've had.
I don't need to ask the other two questions because if you are aware of that, someone's in charge of that contract. You've awarded a contract. If you award them cheap, there's a problem. But you need to monitor that because the standard has dropped.
So we are very aware of it, but I'll get Mr. Littleton just to give an answer to that.
Yeah, look, just for clarity, look, we have recently changed our service provider.
Correct.
And look, we certainly acknowledge that there have been some initial teething problems in the transition from one contractor to the next. They've also had some supply chain issues that have affected them in their rollout. We have certainly addressed that with the current contractor, so rest assured that we are not comfortable with what we are seeing on the site. They have only been in the role for less than a month, so we are working with them to ensure that that the standard of cleaning, in particular in our public toilets, Yokine Reserve being one of them, is improved and substantially addressed. You also ask about the reliability issues in your third question around the Yokine public toilet. Look, I can certainly acknowledge that we have had some difficulties with the pumping station at Yokine. We are currently replacing those pumps. That is imminent. It will happen in the next week or two, and that we think will address the reliability issues that have come that we have been made aware of, and also the cleaning issues. So we thank you certainly for bringing it to our attention, and it is being addressed.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I didn't read them out. I should have probably read them out for the others to hear, but I really appreciate your help.
Thank you.
And answer. Thank you.
Simon Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public. Simon Wheeler, Scarborough. Mayor Owen, it was reported last week that the city recently lost a case against a Balcatta grandmother and school chaplain pursuing a $200 fine in the Magistrates' Court over a dog barking complaint. The loss coming at a cost, according to Channel 7, of some tens of thousands of dollars. Can the city confirm the total cost to the city of this prosecution, and if council considers this an appropriate use of ratepayer funds?
I'm happy to provide you that in writing. I haven't got the cost amount in front of me. I think it is important to note with this one, let's be very clear. The city deals with over 500 complaints last year regarding dog barking, as many of you live next door to dogs. I know many of you probably know how annoying it can be sometimes. This was the only infringement. Out of many abatement notices, this was the infringement. Like any infringement, the person who receives it can elect to have it heard in a court. The city did not aim to prosecute this person.
But
Mr. Wheeler.
The city just happened to pick the one that they were going to lose, by the look of it.
We didn't do well.
On the 12th of October this year, Mayor Owen, an e-petition was tabled requesting the city take legal advice on the DAP approval for the Karrinyup West residential redevelopments to investigate if grounds exist for a judicial review. Now, this e-petition was tabled on the 12th of October, that's nearly 2 months ago, and if we're about to go into another nearly 2 month break for council, so that's going to be nearly 4 months. Such an extended time frame may prejudice any potential judicial review, and I'm concerned that, like a petition I submitted on the 1st of December 2020 from Mr. Patrick Roach, that was similarly addressed to council, that it too, for the Karrinyup one, has fallen into some administrative black hole, never to return. Can the city please confirm the status of these petitions?
Yes, Mr. Rodich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Wheeler, for the question. The city has taken advice in respect to the Karrinyup decision. Elected members will be provided that advice through myself later this week, and I will be writing you specifically as the lead petitioner in regards to the advice I've been provided in a summary format, but I will definitely provide that to you. In regards to Mr. Roach's or the application, which may offend Mr. Roach, that is being considered by the city's compliance team, and as I've stated to you previously before, I will be providing a report to council once that investigation is complete.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Number 3.
Last question with regard to item 17.1 tonight. the city's local meetings procedure law, which is subject to a notice of disallowance in state parliament. Can the city please confirm the current status of the local law? Is it currently in force? Or in practical terms, would a councillor who breached the new provisions of 4.56 or 5.54 of the local law in the meantime be subject to disciplinary action if the law was later disallowed or rescinded by council?
So currently we're operating out under the new meetings procedures local law, and council will determine that this evening, what happens from there.
But so currently...
But we are obliged to act under that meeting procedures local law.
Yes, so someone could be reported for...
I can't imagine someone would be reported unless they did something.
Right, okay.
Pretty
Thank you very
silly,
much.
Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Collins, Paul Collins.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors.
Evening.
Paul Collins of Dianella. When I drive up and down Hale Road, I see a beautifully landscaped median with green grass, reticulated. I used to also see such a beautifully landscaped median with reticulated green grass along Alexander Drive in the suburbs of Menora, Mount Lawley and Dianella. But it appears the landscapers, reticulation operators, grass cutters and whippersnipper operators are used sparingly lately. The green grass is dying and is growing knee-high in places such as crash barriers and limestone walls. Can the city please rejuvenate this median, which forms an entrance to our city from the cities of Perth and Vincent to the standard it once was?
The simple answer is yes, we're happy to investigate it and we'll get back to you. Well, let's have a look at it and see what the problem is.
Thank you. Happy to point out
I'm sure you will be.
the knee-high if you need me on site.
Yes.
Just need people to open their eyes. Number two. Thank you for the answer. What is the approved and constructed minimum open space and tree requirement for two homes nearing completion at 34 and 36 Cresswell Road, Dianella? And how does that compare to the city's scheme and policy requirements for a R20 zoned lot greater than 500 square metres?
I'm not sure if you sent this through previous, so I'll see if, I think... Mr.
No, I
Roberts-
haven't.
No, so we might have to respond to you in writing for that
Notice.
one, if that's okay. Take it on notice.
And I spoke clearly enough so
Yes.
you can hear the recording.
Yep.
Last question, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you sit there above the City of Stirling crest, and the crest has the words, "Be Stirling." Do you know what those words, where those words come from and what they mean?
Be sterling. Be good. Be excellent.
Can I help you?
You sure can, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Mayor, we have a new council recently elected, and it comes from King Richard's II Shakespearean play, Act 4, Scene 1. And if my words be sterling, I won't go on. It means, Mr. Mayor, a mark of excellence, to stand every test, the highest governance, the highest of genuine quality, the highest standards of value, to be dependable and to be true to word. And I encourage Council to adopt that motto and those words and those requirements throughout the whole city, staff and councillors in 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. We will do our best. Now, councillors, we do need another extension. We are approaching an hour and a half, but I'll ask for an extension of 10 minutes. Councillor Hatton has moved it. Councillor Thornton has seconded it. A show of hands, please, councillors. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. To those remaining, again, I implore you, please let us move on to the agenda as soon as possible. Keep your questions brief, and I'll ask Joy Dorrington to come forward. Thank you. Just your name and suburb.
Joy Dorrington from Churchlands. is regarding the cul-de-sac safety in Churchlands estate. Excuse me, I've got a bit of croaky voice.
That's right.
In response to my question on the 16th of November, the Director of Infrastructure advised that the city has to consider the safety of motorists from neighbouring suburbs equally with the residents of the estate. Can the Director inform us how allowing all-day non-resident parking in our 5.5 metre wide paved road cul-de-sac provides the residents using the road, which includes both the elderly and toddlers, etc., with the same level of safety as a parked car? He also stated the provision of the parking controls would be considered by Council in that meeting. Can the Director please advise when this consideration took place and how will now it be made safer?
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Provided the vehicles are parked in an orderly manner and do not contravene any regulations or local laws, they should not pose any imminent safety risk for local residents. The city's observations are that vehicles parked in these roads have not been parked illegally.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second question, disruption of waste collection in our Churchlands estate, in our cul-de-sacs particularly. In response to the question from Mr Slee, Tony Slee, one of our residents, raised on the 16th of November on the inability of waste vehicles to access the bins when in their normal location, the Director of Infrastructure advised that the provision of parking controls within the Churchlands estate will be considered by Council as part of the item on the agenda. Please, can we explain when this consideration took place and how the ratepayers will no longer have to manoeuvre their bins down the road so the council workers can do their job?
Mr Littleton.
Yeah, thank you. The consideration of parking controls was discussed at the council meeting held on the 16th of November 2021 and a decision was made. It is not uncommon for residents within inner city suburbs to position their bins at alternative locations to allow for parking activities and other constraints.
Thank you.
Bruce Quayle, please. Your name and suburb, thanks.
Bruce Quayle from Churchlands. Thank you for making the extra time available. I have three questions, all to do with the Churchlands estate parking issues. First one, in the city's meeting procedures local law, item 5.5, clause 6, it states at any meeting the council must not vote on any matter that is the subject of a petition presented to that meeting, unless A, the matter is the subject of a report included in the agenda, and B, the council has considered the issues raised in that petition. I was the lead petitioner for the second petition raised on the subject of student all-day parking within the estate, tabled at the meeting on the 16th of November. This petition actually requested the council to reconsider the recommendation as proposed by Councillor Ray and justified it with 5 primary points why it would not solve the problem. I noted with absolute dismay that the second petition has summarily been closed without any communication with the petitioners and without responding to the points raised in the petition, claiming that the matter had been considered and voted on by the council the very evening the petition had been tabled. Could the Mayor or the Director of Infrastructure now inform those 88 verified petitioners how the issues raised in the petition were taken into consideration before the vote was taken? And when there was no discussion whatsoever, can you further reassure us the result of the vote was not simply a foregone conclusion?
Mr Blanchard. Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. Look, the content of the petition was read out at the council meeting prior to the consideration of the officer's report, so the councillors were aware of the actions that were being requested by the petitioners. But I can certainly guarantee you that that council, I think, were well aware of the many issues that that the community had been expressing in relation to the Churchlands estate, and had certainly contemplated all of those things in its consideration of the item.
Thank you.
Question 2. A well-known quote by Albert Einstein says, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result." A recent recommendation approved by Council includes the allocation of additional parking bays to students in Memory Place. Can the Director please inform us how he intends to reduce the burden on Churchlands Avenue and the adjoining cul-de-sacs by making yet more Memory Place bays available when this did not work previously? Perhaps he would consider including within the new trial the placement of restricted parking signs at least within the two cul-de-sacs of the Grove and Hibiscus Court, which are likely to feel the brunt of the latest intended changes.
And thank you for that question. And I can answer that. We've already had meetings with the school and with a strategy to try to encourage more parking in those. I don't think it's been unsuccessful, and I certainly can't imagine why anyone in your estate would be opposed to us opening up Memory Place to student parking.
Question 3. The Director of Infrastructure totally missed the point when responding to S. Chong's question on the 16th of November relating to the cul-de-sac bulbs. The point we made was because the cul-de-sacs end in bulbs, there is already very limited parking for these residents, visitors, or attending service vehicles within the cul-de-sacs. By allowing all-day student parking in the cul-de-sac, it removes all available parking from the cul-de-sac. We thus request time-restricted parking signage in the cul-de-sacs to at least allow our visitors and tradesmen to park within reasonable proximity of our houses.
Thank you. And as the motion was passed at council, one of those things was that it does come back to council before the end of the first term next year, where we'll obviously be having a look at how all those current restrictions are working and what effect they are having on those cul-de-sac bulbs, and we'll continue to work with the residents.
Thank you.
Mary Basson. Wayne Clark. Oh, sorry. There you are there. Yep.
My questions relate to Churchlands estate parking, all three.
Thank you. And just your name and
Mary Basson, Churchlands. In response to my 16th November question on council supporting P-platers driving and parking in narrow cul-de-sacs, the Mayor yourself responded that, quote, council does not think it's a good idea to direct people there. There have been restrictions put in place and council will consider that during the meeting. We welcome the fact that the Mayor agrees P-platers should not be parking in the cul-de-sacs. But can the Mayor please advise us what restrictions will be put in place to prevent this and what consideration was given to that point during the meeting, since there was nothing specific either tabled or minuted to support this?
Sure. And I think the direct question I answered was us directing people to park there, and we certainly don't direct people. Look, we've answered a lot of these before. It is legal to park on roads within Western Australia and indeed within the City of Stirling. We can't close off every street to parking. You know, we know it happens in lots of streets. We acknowledge that Churchlands Estate has a lot of students parking there. We are working with the residents to try to come up with the best outcome we can without making it a closed estate and putting that problem onto other streets. And as we've heard from other streets in that Churchlands area already tonight, it is a wider problem than just that estate. We'll continue to work with the residents. And I've had a meeting with someone who lives on who's going to be up next, who lives on one of those cul-de-sacs, and committed that we will continue to work with you and have a look at how we can better manage that parking if it doesn't abate.
That would be a welcome change, thank you. In response to yet another question on resident safety raised by P. Henderson on the 16th November, the Director of Infrastructure advised that the City has made a recommendation that will seek to remove a large proportion of student parking from Churchlands Estate. Can we have an assurance that this will actually happen, since he did nothing the last time when more than double the number of Memory Place bays were made available? We believe installing time-restricted parking within the estate will at least encourage the students to use the bays set aside for them. They currently say we choose to park here, even though bays are available for them in Memory Place.
Thank you. And we will continue to monitor and, again, work with the school to encourage the students to use the Memory Place parking. And this item will come back to council so that they can monitor those results and see how it has been working for the estate.
By not erecting time-restricted signage in the estate, City is not endeavouring to discourage the students from using their newly acquired motor vehicles. In effect, they are encouraging them by ensuring they have convenient free parking in a residential neighbourhood not far from the school. This is contrary to the emissions policies of all levels of government, and it behoves all of us to do our little bit and minimise emissions. Why should commuting students parking all day in our narrow, winding, local access roads, all of them no-through roads, why should such students be safely accommodated at the inconvenience of your own ratepayers? if the restrictions were installed before the start of the new term, those students not yet driving would be less likely to use cars just because they can when their turn comes around. Can we please have time-restricted parking erected over the entire estate before term starts?
Thank you. And that item has already been considered by council. There will not be any further restrictions before term starts. We, as a council resolution, we will monitor them through the first term next year and report back to council on whether that was successful or not. But I also just want to add, look, the reality is it's not council's role to stop children or 19 or 18-year-olds driving their cars. That's not our role to step into that space. And we do have a duty to make sure that everyone is safe.
And a duty to ratepayers. Thank you very much.
We certainly do. Wayne Clark.
Good evening, Wayne Clark, Churchlands. With the questions I have, some of that's been covered with what you've spoken about in the last few minutes, so I will paraphrase my questions. Knowing that there has been a meeting between the council and the school and the Department of Education, will the results of that meeting be made public?
Yeah,
the residents?
I'm happy to provide you a summary of that in writing so that you have that, Mr. Clark.
Thank you very much. And my question number 2 is, of course, we've been advised before that any parking restrictions in our suburb will cause an adverse impact on other suburbs. But as we are already experiencing those adverse impact, why should we? Whereas the parking restrictions would alleviate that. And my third question is that the installation of Memory Place, more parking bays in Memory Place, unless we have parking restrictions in the Churchlands estate, how do we encourage the children to use Memory Place?
Well, hopefully the fact that we are working with the school and promoting it, and the reality is that if it doesn't work, then there could be further restrictions. So, that's the incentive. I guess it's a carrot approach, but we will continue to monitor and hopefully we'll get a result.
Thank you. I kept them brief.
Thank you. And we are getting to the end. I've got one last one I've got recorded. That's Rebecca Anderson. Is there a Rebecca Anderson? Is it? Oh, she's been up before. And there is another one, is there? Yes. Oh, fantastic. We got some more. Yes. Please come up. Yep. Sorry, I don't have your name here. I might have missed it. Yeah, I'm pointing at the front.
My name is Keeling. I live in Yokine. I'm a regular user of Yokine Reserve and a signatory to the petition presented tonight. My questions relate to comments contained in an email to me from the City's Manager of Facilities, Projects and Assets, Paul Killick, in relation to toilet provision at Yokine Reserve. Question 1. Did councillors receive a report and make a determination on the ongoing need for public toilet facilities attached to the Culbinia No. 1 and Culbinia No. 2 club rooms at Yokine Reserve prior to the removal of these public toilets during the refurbishment of these club rooms? And if so, what was the date of that determination?
Mr. Littleton, are you able to help with that?
Yeah, look, my understanding is that the old Yokine master plan identified the need for toilets. It was identified that the landmark unit be established. As Mr. Kellick identified to you, the toilets in the club room were seen certainly weren't disability compliant, and were then re-established or refurbished. Part of that refurbishment was removal and incorporation into the club room project. So was council recently made aware of that change? I don't believe the answer is yes, but I think it was part of a broader strategy for that precinct and in the development of the Yokine Play space as well.
Thank you.
Question 2. Did city officers carry out any community engagement or survey of usage before making a determination that, I quote, the old non-compliant public toilets in the Culbinia clubrooms had been redundant since 2014, when the new universal access toilets were installed and were no longer required? If not, what data was used to justify the decision to remove these public toilets?
Mr. Littleton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kellick referenced the toilet provision that we had provided to 5 other regional open spaces, some that we have just recently established, as in Binner Parkland. So it is absolutely correct that the city had determined what broad usage of public toilets and the provision of the 2 public toilets that the landmark units service.
Thank you.
Question 3. Do city officers acknowledge the inequity of disregarding the requirements, often urgent, of the hundreds of regular and casual daily users of Yokine Reserve by removing public toilets from the club rooms to provide greater functionality to the existing club rooms and change rooms, which will benefit a lesser number of active sporting club members with improved facilities which receive much less usage? Will the council commit to reviewing this situation in response to the genuine and informed request of the 650 signatories to the petition presented this evening?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I saw another hand up the back, did I? Yes. I hope you just want to come up and say Merry Christmas, Mr. Hadley, so we can get on with this meeting.
Not at all, not at all.
Your name and suburb.
Roland Hadley, Woodlands. Sorry I'm a bit late. I didn't realise it was starting a bit early tonight. Although the ratepayers may appreciate the City Sterling 2020-22 calendar, what is the total cost of the artworks portrayed? Information on the back of the calendar stated cost 76 cents to print. How many hundreds of thousands were printed? And naturally, what's the total cost spent on this production?
Sure, and we'll be able to respond to you in writing and give you that.
Thank you. Second question.
They look good this year, by the way. They're very good. They are very good this year.
Well, it's your opinion, it's not mine, but there again, we never see eye to eye anyway, do we? You know? How much will it cost the City of Stirling ratepayers to implement the reforms and changes to the Local Government Act for 2022-23 for each department?
I don't think that's known yet, Mr. Hadley. Is the Act? It's only a draft reform that's out for public comment, so it hasn't even been finalised yet.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, a bit theoretical. Would the city ever consider transferring funds to the State Health Department to purchase a new X-ray machine for the emergency department at Sir Charlie Gardner's Hospital, approximately $350,000, or conversely, another piece of equipment costing $3 million?
I wouldn't imagine so.
Has the city not got enough funds? If the health department was desperate...
I can't imagine that local government would be funding the State Health Department, Mr. Hadley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now that brings us to the end of question time. A very long question time to finish the year off. Thank you everyone for your patience. We'll now move on to item 8, applications for leave of absence. Councillors, are there any requests of leave of absence? Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be unavailable from the 4th to the 15th of Jan.
Thank you. Any other requests for leave of absence? No, I'll ask for a move and a second to accept those. Move Councillor Ree, seconded Councillor Sargent. And just a show of hands, councillors. That's unanimous, thank you. Item 9, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a second of a motion to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting? Councillor Ree, you have an alternative motion.
Yes, I'd like to move with an amendment, please, if I speak now. Yes.
Thank you.
There we are.
And it's just to have that following amendment added in. to clarify Mr Collins's last
Given
question.
read or?
No, that's right. I think it's clear. It's just to add the amendment that was sent around to everyone.
That will now become part of the
And
minutes.
seconded Councillor Perkov. And I'll just have a show of hands. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Announcements by the presiding member. Councillor Criado, I believe you have an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to, announce to the council about an award that was won by the City of Stirling, which was a project in partnership with a number of other not-for-profits. So Nala Jukan Healing Centre was awarded the bronze in the category for best practice in collaboration between government and any other organisation, recognising their work at this year's Institute of Public Administration Australia WA Achievement Awards, which was held on 3rd of December 2021. Nala Jukan was recognised for the work involving the City of Stirling as the lead agency collaborating with 10 specialist organisations to form a partnership responsible for the establishment and operation of Nala Jukan Healing Centre, WA's only metropolitan one-stop hub, providing support for women and children at the risk of or experiencing family and domestic violence. At Nala Jukan Healing Centre, women and children can access multiple specialist support services, including counselling, legal, financial, housing assistance, as well as healing programs in one safe, welcoming, and culturally responsive location. The hub design makes it easier for women to access the right assistance at the right time, contributing to improved outcomes, as well as allowing women to tell their story only once, reducing the trauma associated with retelling their experience. The Nala Jukan Centre has only been open for a year, and during this time it has supported 477 women. On average, at any one time, 70 women are receiving case management support through the centre's advocates. It was estimated that the advocates would be working at capacity after a year of operation, but this target was achieved only after 5 months. This early attainment of the goal is representative of the demand for the service and the commitment of the partners, and the referral partners are confident in the quality of the service provision. Nala Jukan is a remarkable example of government and non-government organizations working together, with all contributing their individual expertise to improve outcomes for women at risk of experiencing family and domestic violence. The Nala Jukan Healing Centre is funded by the Department for Communities, and its consortia partners are the Australian Childhood Foundation, Ebenezer Aboriginal Corporation, the Ishar Multicultural Women's Health Services, Kala Koleni Aboriginal Corporation, Legal Aid Commission of WA, Mercy Care, Metropolitan Migrant Resource Centre, the Northern Suburbs Community Legal Centre, Sudbury Community House Association, and the Wajak Northside Aboriginal Community Corporation.
Thank you. And while you're there, I will ask also, Chris Brereton, Emma Roscoe and Elizabeth Richards are in the audience, so if you can stand up at the back to acknowledge the amazing work you do out at that centre. Thank you, Councillor Crutter. Yeah, I think if you just keep it there for tonight, we'll move on. And yeah, that's all right. Call it presented. Look, fantastic achievement, and I think you did it justice then, Councillor Crutter, and obviously with your role at Isha as well. It was fantastic to be there to receive that award, and especially seeing it was on their first birthday. So a great acknowledgement of the work you do and your teams. Before we move on, I will keep it brief, but obviously it's the last meeting of the year. We've got 3 new councillors who've joined us. You've fitted in fantastically. It's great to have you on board. To those councillors who were re-elected recently, it's been a whirlwind since then, up till now. Obviously after this you get a little bit of a break, hopefully over Christmas time. But I wish you and all of your families, and to the members of the gallery and to those viewers at home, a very Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year. We'll now move on to item 11, the unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Item 12, reports and recommendations from committees. We'll now move on to the Community and Resources Committee. Councillors, on 12.1 ES1, Churchlands Green, I believe is to be pulled out. Are there any other of these that you wish to pull out? Councillor Farrelly?
It'll be very quick, but I'd like to pull out 12.1 RL1.
Thank you. Is there any, Councillor Ree?
Yes, please. May I 12.1 GOV1, please.
Thank you, councillors. And we'll now go back to item 12.1 ES1 on page 26, the Churchlands Green. Councillor Keith Sargent as chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like this is the one we've all been waiting for. I will move the committee's recommendation, and just so it's clear, I would like to read it out. That council approve the implementation of the permanent closure of the right turn pocket from Pearson to Illumini Churchlands as per option 1. And number 2, that the closure of the right turn pocket from Pearson Street into Illumini be undertaken during the current financial year with funds listed in the funds listed and approved in the 21-22 annual budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have it seconded by Councillor Proud. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree, I'll go to you, Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so obviously a lot of people here tonight, a lot of discussion. This has been around for a while now, and I just want to start my talk tonight on a bit of history. This came to council because the residents of the Churchlands estate were worried of the rat running from Empire to Pearson and vice versa. And it wasn't just cars, it was vans, trucks, etc., etc. So as a result of that, this council decided to do a number of trials. So it wasn't just a one trial, this is what we'll do. We actually did a number of them. We consulted along the way. And we got to got the opportunity to finally see all the evidence and make a decision just before the election this year. And the council, in its wisdom then, decided to put that off a tad and consult one more time with the residents just to make sure that what was in the report and what the residents wanted was actually on board with what we wanted to do today. So that consultation that went out came back, and as you can see in the report here today, 73% of residents that live within the estate area want to see something rather than nothing. So that's what the consultation came back, and that's what I guess I'm here today to promote and say that that's what I support. The 73% though is broken up into two options. So there were two options provided for some form of traffic modification. The one up here today is option 1, which is a closure of Pearson and Illumini, or traffic management around Pearson and Illumini. And option 2, Mr. Mayor, included University Avenue and Empire Avenue. The problem with that particular intersection is, as we know, that the town of Cambridge doesn't play well with others, and they're not on board with doing anything at that particular intersection. So we're left with what we can control, and what we can control is the intersection of Illumini and Pearson Avenue. Alumni, sorry, my apologies. So this is where we're at, Mr. Mayor. So option 1, in what we can control is that particular intersection. The trials that we did show that there was a reduction in traffic across the estate with this particular option. So we're on the path to trying to reduce the rat running that happens in that area. So I do support this recommendation tonight. I do support it getting off the ground. I think this has been around long enough, and as one of the residents said today, we keep stalling, and I think the residents of Churchlands, one way or another, deserve an answer tonight from this council. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, and we'll see what council has to say.
Thanks, Councillor Proud.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is Traffic Management 101. I'm just going to run through some brief statements. These are the facts. Traffic management trials were first undertaken when traffic volumes on Alumni east to west was approaching 3,000 vehicles per day and exceeding 3,000 vehicles per day travelling west to east
from on University from Empire. So even after the development was completed at the ECU, former ECU University, traffic continued to increase by approximately 200 vehicles each year. So origin destination surveys undertaken within the Churchlands Green Estate evidenced approximately 71% of traffic using university and alumni as non-local traffic using the estate to cut through east-west and west to east. In the final consultation, recently undertaken in October, a convincing 73% of residents within the estate, as Councillor Sargent has mentioned, supported some form of traffic management treatment. That's on page 39, it's very clear. So option 1 was restricted right-hand turn, Pearson Street into Alumni, and option 3 at the second stage was carrying on from the Pearson into Alumni, and it also included Empire into University. So although the majority of submissions, 53% within the estate, supported option 3, which was both stage 1 and stage 2 together, the recommendation tonight is to undertake option 1, which is only the right-hand turn on Pearson, turning to restrict it, turning into Alumni. So the reason we're only looking
Councillor
at
Brown,
that...
just through the chair.
Sorry, you're right.
It's habit, it used to be on the
yes,
other side.
You're right. Because option 1 achieves the trial objective of significantly reducing non-local traffic through the estate by more than 50%. The trial encouraged non-local traffic to use the higher order roads surrounding the estate, Cromarty, Empire, Pearson, Tuscany, Hale, that are designed and built to carry heavier traffic loads, up to 7,000 in some cases on Cromarty. They're higher order roads for Empire and Pearson. They can carry a whole lot more. The City will continue to monitor the traffic stats annually, as we've done at Churchlands Green since 2010. If non-local traffic approaches or exceeds 3,000 vehicles a day in the future on Alumni or University, which are the only ones really that cop the heavy traffic, we can further explore option 3, which is to bring in the Empire right-hand turn restriction into University. We will look at that, should it increase. I just want to cover off on a couple of points that have been made, I think, a little bit too much of. Safety issues have been raised about Churchlands Primary School. The City of Stirling has roughly 48 schools, including high schools, but mainly primary schools within its boundaries. Each come with their vehicle congestion and parent parking issues at drop-off and pick-up times. So Churchlands Primary School has been really proactive and are to be commended in managing their traffic issues. A couple of items that they've managed to do. They staggered the drop-off and pick-up times for their lower and upper grade classes. A traffic warden is on site most days for the drop-off pick-up times. As with most metro schools, there's 40-kilometre speed limits that apply and flashing lights are installed, as they do at school zones. As well, the Northwest Road Reserve at the Pearson-Cromarty intersection, which has been currently used for a couple of years now for overflow parking by Churchlands Primary, that has now been gazetted into the care, control and management of the Education Department. I've no doubt it will be repurposed wisely to further alleviate the issues the school is experiencing. A little bit's been mentioned. Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask for a 2-minute extension.
Councillor Perkov has moved that. Councillor Sargent has seconded it. Just a show of hands. Councillors, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Continue.
We have heard a little bit over the recent committee meeting and in emails that we're receiving that a letter has been sent to the Ombudsman. I actually welcome the letter to the Ombudsman. This is nothing for elected members to fear or a reason to stall this item over. My understanding is that on receiving the letter, the Ombudsman will review and correspond with the local government authority responsible for the matters raised, and that would be the City of Stirling. The City will respond accordingly, and that's likely to be the end of the matter. Recently raised issue of Valencia traffic, 1 kilometre away from Churchlands Green. And I'll just reiterate a couple of the comments that the officers have mentioned during question time. It's acknowledged for a local access road, the short 90-metre section of Valencia between Empire and Ailsa, the first intersection, which has 7 abutting properties, is carrying above the 3,000 vehicles per day preferred for a local access road. It goes over that by 400 or 500 vehicles per day. So north of Ailsa, for the remainder of the roughly 880 metres towards Hale Road, the traffic volumes drop to around 2,500 vehicles a day, well within the preferred local access road carrying capacity. So also to be noted, Valencia has road widths of between 7.2 and 7.4 metres wide.
You're getting another 30-second hurry up.
Which is essentially a local distributor road design, whereas the majority of roads within Churchlands Green are 6 metres. Quite a bit of difference there negotiating that. These traffic volumes have been fairly consistent over the past 35 years. I'm reiterating the officers again. The volumes consist mainly of local residential traffic and are largely unaffected by the Churchlands Green traffic management trials, evidenced by the traffic volumes when no trials were underway at Churchlands Green.
Wrap it up, please, Councillor.
Last wrap up. The matter has been through rigorous consultation and the trial period over the last 18 months, and I very much seek your support in approving this item tonight and putting it to bed. Thanks so much.
Councillor Ree.
Thank you. I'd like to move a procedural motion, please, that due to making sure that we make informed decisions with all the information, that the item 12.1 ES1, oh there it is, Churchlands Green Traffic Management Trial be referred to a future council meeting pending the findings and response from the Ombudsman, please.
Thank you. That's a procedural, so I'll ask for a seconder. Councillor Farrelly has seconded that. It is a procedural, so this is to hold it over. I will now put that to the vote. Councillors, if you vote. Let's go to a show of hands, councillors. If I can have a show of hands if you want a procedural motion. So I have 4, Councillor Ree, Councillor Sandry, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Olo, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Farrelly, and against I have Councillor Hatton, Councillor Perkoff, Councillor Criado, Councillor Sargent, Councillor Kristovich, Councillor Proud and myself. That motion is lost. Thanks for putting that up before the numbers. And they'll be recorded, so I will go back to you for debate. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. Figures are very interesting anomaly. One can sit there and say if one's living in a premises that people whose driveways don't actually abut an area, where does this say in comparison to people down the road who actually have to use the road to get in and out? You know, comparing apples with oranges there, even though we're on the fruit in the market. So I don't believe that some of the traffic modelling that we've done actually shows the bigger picture. Mr Littleton made the comment at the last resource meeting that they have increased the traffic on various roads such as Valencia and Luca, which is paramount to that area of people getting from A to B with all the schools. Yes, it's unfortunate that Churchlands is very popular. Very unfortunate. However, the city hasn't been addressing the issue. Closing roads do not address the issue. Making barricades don't address the issue. But sitting there having a plan for the whole suburb. It's commented several times tonight about rat running. How are you addressing rat running? All you're doing is saying, you know, people on one road are okay. One road is okay. Now it's going out through the suburbs and we've got lots of roads that aren't okay, which to me is a major issue. And I think the people that are living to try to get out of their driveways, whether it's Valencia, whether it's Luca, whether it's Outram, whether it's Churchlands Estate, or even Churchlands Green and Cromarty. They are all affected in some way. We wouldn't get the petitions we've got if it wasn't for the fact that people are affected. All these people have come forward and said, look at me, I am affected. You can't sit there and use statistics and say to people, well, we'll add 13% here, 12% there. Oh, look, wait till we get over 50%. That's not what you're asking people to do. You either ask them for one thing or the other, because that's actually fiddling the statistics, and that's not what we want to do. People have actually said to me, I don't want to add, I wanted 1. I didn't want 3. Why are they adding 1 and 3 together? And then as the comment made several times, the staff have already said they were not going to do 3. So what are we asking the people to do? And that makes it very confusing. These are people that have lived in their houses.
That's not true. The officers didn't say that at all.
Thank you. Just continue, Councillor Reid, it's fine.
Thank you. The people are living in these areas. They're beautiful homes. They spend a lot of money and time living in these areas. They expect some support from the council, some amenity. We don't have a library. We don't have a swimming pool. We don't have a golf course. We don't even have a community centre.
Let's keep it relevant, hey?
Well, it's relevant. All they're asking for is a road in which to get in and out of their properties without a lot of issues. I believe that my motion tonight to hold it over for the Ombudsman, which you've all been seeing that the Ombudsman is being contacted, is actually very relevant. I don't want to make a decision against the Ombudsman. I've taken that so seriously, especially with the new local government review. Under the Local Government Act, particularly that relates to the CEO, we are 154, I think it is, that we are supposed to make informed decisions. Sometimes we're not getting these informed decisions. To me, we can't make that decision unless we've got all the information. And I think that is really important. The other thing I'd like to comment is that those that put these up, that don't live in the area, that those that sitting there and saying it's all right to close a road and they don't live in the area, is very sad. Very, very sad for the whole community. And that's what we're supposed to be doing here, representing the community at large. And when the majority of people take the time to come and say, this is not on, I think that they should be listened to. When we have the schools of Churchlands High School, Churchlands Primary School and Newman College actually write and say there's a major issue with traffic that was not presented to anybody and no response was given, not a year ago, 2 years ago, keeps going. So they've actually said there is an issue and that wasn't addressed. So it's not like it's just one person. This is collective schools and everything.
30 seconds for you, Councillor.
I don't need more than that. All I can say is that I think if we look at the majority of people, we're not looking at weighing up what's going on. And I think it's very disappointing that councillors around the table aren't considering how important it is to get all the information, such as from the Ombudsman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And I will just close off by saying it's quite obviously the councillors that sit around this table, the councillors that sit around this table don't all live in the area, but they have to make a decision under the Act. So, Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Look, I am aware, as I have mentioned before, of that area, but I'm also concerned. We've got the Ombudsman being asked to review and correspond to the city. And I did take into account that there's been a lot of work undertaken by different people within the Churchlands Green area. But we've also got concerns now that are spread beyond that in regard to Valencia and in regard to Lucca and Tuscany Way. We've also got problems with the parking of students in those areas that are coming into the Churchland estate and into potentially, I suppose, some of them could be jumping the track and going into Churchlands Green. We seem to have a real hotspot of concern. I do believe we're looking at only one aspect. It may not be the... And I know this is extended, and I thank the Director of Infrastructure for all the work and also the manager. But I think we probably need to really relook at this area. It has become a hotbed of discontent. The traffic is a real concern now. we have got a problem in that area, and review and correspond with the city, hold it over until we know what the Ombudsman is going to say. I do notice a few whiffs of look, my apologies, but this has become bigger as the time has evolved. And are we going to try and get a solution that works across the board? And I think that's really what it's come down to now. I think there is other factors that have come and compounded. No one knew about Valencia. No one considered the kids parking at Churchlands. Newman currently use a car park. They lease it from the old ECU car park. It was one of the old ECU car parks. But an overall plan could also change that. I understand the principals and the managers and the schools have been also conversing over the last 12 to 18 months. I phoned up a couple of the schools. My kids went to Newman, one of them went to Newman, and I am aware of, Churchlands and things like that. So all of those factors, I think, really needs to come back, and you need to have a proper community discussion. You've had a lot of discord, and you really need to have all the facts in front of you. And I'm not saying don't go there. Ultimately, it might be the best direction. But I'm saying this discussion, this 2 or months of discussions has exposed after all these trials is that no one's completely happy with everything. And maybe we need to get all those people together, have a proper meeting where you can all talk about it and come to something that then can be worked on by the officers. I know the officers are very capable. I know disjointed outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan, I think you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Look, it came to my attention today that this very item may have been reported to the local government minister. Can governance inform us, has the city received any correspondence from the local government
Mr Blanchard.
office?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have not received any correspondence from the department in relation to this item.
Thank you.
And can I just add, I'll get Mr Blanchard to clarify. Everyone is within their right to report the City of Stirling to a minister, to an ombudsman, or any of that. It's a very dangerous place when we get to the stage that, on the notion that we could get reported, that we don't make any decisions in this council chamber. Mr Blanchard? Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That is correct. Neither the department nor the Ombudsman has any power to make any directions or require the city to make any decision in relation to this item. The Ombudsman in particular conducts a review and make recommendations, but the ultimate decision will have to be made by this council.
Thank you. And if there's no other indication on this item, I will go to Councillor Sargent to close debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll try not to take too long on this one. You mentioned earlier, Mr Mayor, in one of the responses to the residents, this was an evidence-based trial. Councillor is correct. I don't live in the area. I don't live in a lot of people's areas, but I'm required in this council to make decisions across the whole City of Stirling because I'm a councillor of the City of Stirling. And I look at the evidence on Churchlands, I look at the ins and outs, I look at what the officers have done. I am not afraid of what the Ombudsman will come back with. I know that our officers are professional, I know that they've done their job well, and I know that when the Ombudsman does come back, I don't think, personally, he's going to find much problems with what we've done. But as has already been said here, the outcome of tonight will not be made by the Ombudsman. They might make recommendations on how we went wrong or what we did right, but what we have here now is we need to make a decision. The residents of Churchlands Green, in my mind, this is why we consult. This is why we have gone to the residents directly. Our last consultation was direct mail out to the residents. Our last consultation was to say, what is it that you particularly want? And I'm not going to ignore a 73% of what the residents are saying they want something to be done here. No one was ever going to be happy. Anything the city does across the board. I mean, I heard tonight about a footpath over in Currington. There's people unhappy about that. There's people in other parts of the city of Stirling that do like footpaths. There's never ever going to be an outcome where people are going to be 100% on board and you're never going to get any kickback from the community. But does that mean we just ignore everything? Does that mean we just go, well, the 73% that actually have said, hey, we do want to see something, we ignore them? We don't pay attention to them? This is an evidence-based trial. And from the trial, the residents that live in that area have come back and said, look, you know, it's not so bad. We do want to see some stuff happen there. And I'm going to pay attention to those residents because they are in the majority. And they are the ones that want to see something happen at Churchlands. So I'm going to finish on that, Mr. Mayor. And I urge all councillors to stop stalling on this and let's make a decision.
Thank you. And with that, that closes debate. So it's moved Councillor Sargent, seconded Councillor Proud. I will now put this to Council. Councillor Olo, your vote. Thank you. And with that, that motion is carried. And for, we have Councillors Crowdo, Hatton, Kristovich, Lagan, Perkoff, Proud, Sandri, Sargent and myself, and against Councillor Farrelly, Olo, Ree and Thornton. We will now go on to item 12.1 RL1, Public Open Space Strategy, being pulled out, the approval to advertise a public comment. Councillor Sargent as Chair of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the committee's recommendation to Council, which is to take the public open space strategy out to community consultation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, councillors? Councillor Farrelly, you seconded? Okay. And Councillor Sandra, you're opposed? Yeah, I want to make comment. Okay. Councillor Sargent?
I don't have much to add on this, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the public open space strategy is quite an important piece of document for the City of Stirling going forward, and I think it's quite important that we do go out to public and we do get consultation from them to just see if we're on the right track when it comes to what we think public open space looks like going forward into the future. So I look forward to hearing everyone's comment.
Thank you. Councillor Farrelly? We might just get you to use the microphone.
Oh, no, there it is. Right, thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Look, I really wanted to just make a comment. I made it at the committee meeting, and I want to say congratulations to what I have seen as probably one of the best reports that has come out from this council since I've been a councillor. It's a bit like a thesis. It's gone into all aspects of natural areas, public open space. It's looked at every aspect of the study, and it has provided what I really do believe is a marvellous thesis on our public open space and a strategy to go forward. And I'd like to have my congratulations recorded to the authors of this study. I know it goes across a couple of departments, but we've got a couple of people here. I want you to personally know that I believe this is why we have great staff on the City of Stirling. That is a great report. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to make some comment and put my thoughts recorded in terms of the policy framework. First, I would like to thank Simone Parser. She's done a really good job with the strategy, and she's been very patient and diligent with my questions and ongoing answer sessions. Now, I just want to put on the record that our policy is aligned with the framework that's set by the state, and I appreciate Councillor Lagan moving an amendment at committee meeting, which is number 2, whereby we write to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and the WAPC to seek an update of their policy framework. But that principally relates back to the fact that certain MRS reserves, Metropolitan Region Scheme reserves, which are zoned public open space, are not factored into the percentage. And a perfect example of that is Inglewood, where we're sub 3% in open space. However, that is not the reality. There are actually parks that we do utilise and that the community utilises, but under the framework cannot be included in the percentage, and it's not reflecting exactly what's going on in the suburb, and that's accounted for in Dinella as well and other areas, particularly those with regional open spaces and the foreshore of Scarborough. The reality is they are utilised by the residents. So I just want to put it on the public record that this council seeks that the Department of Planning and Lands and Heritage and the WAPC update their policies to truly reflect what public open space is and what the community uses, and that should be able to facilitate the strategy and the percentages based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And given that, Councillor Sargent, it might be a quick close because there's no one actually opposed to this item. So, Councillor Sargent.
I close.
Yeah, thank you. And I will now put that item. And Councillor Olo. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to item 12.1, Gov 1, 2021 Policy Manual Review. Councillor Sargent as Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the committee's recommendation to council.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Lagan and Councillor Ree, you're opposed. Councillor Sargent.
I'll reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Ree.
Yes, I would like to hold it over, but given that people want to hurry up and don't want to dwell on things, I'd just like to say I will oppose this because having gone through an absolutely nasty election, I do not believe that this election signage policy addresses the concerns that I have and the way I was treated. So I'll just vote against it because we're running out of time.
Yep. No, but I'm happy to, Councillor, I'm happy to put them separately so you can just vote against item 1. Would that be better for you? Yep. This obviously went through committee and the recommendation from committee was to retain the current one because they did debate the alternatives. So I will now put that, if you're happy. Doesn't seem to be any debate on it. So, sorry, I'll just need this in front of us. So I will now put 1, that council retains the existing election signage policy. Councillor Sandri, and that item is carried with Councillor Ree and Councillor Farrelly opposed. And then I'll put the rest of those, which include those other policies, to the vote now. So I vote on number 2. And we just got Councillor Proud, I think it is. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That brings to the balance of reports. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be very happy to move the balance of reports.
Councillor Proud has seconded that. I'll put that to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. Members of the gallery, those at home, please be advised the remainder of the Community and Resource Committee recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution. Councillors will now move on to the P&D Committee items. Item 12.2 DS1, the local scheme, that's Walcott Street, has been pulled out as was referred to tonight. Are there any other items you wish to pull out? Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can please pull out 12.2 DS7.
Yep, Majestic Parade. Thank you.
My 12.2 CF3 will be pulled, won't it?
And CF3, yes, that is noted. Thank you, councillors. So we'll go to item 12.2 DS1 on page 307. This was referred to council. Councillor Proud as Deputy Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hand this over to Councillor Lagan.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an alternative recommendation.
Sure.
Do you want me to read it out?
Just, yeah, if you get the main gist of it.
So pursuant to the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, Council not support scheme amendment number 123 to local planning scheme number 3, as the proposed additional use will result in unacceptable intensification of the site The vehicle access and traffic concerns raised during advertising of the proposed highlight the unsuitability of the site for further additional use. And the main reason, or one of the main reasons, is the site is located in the Manoora Heritage Protection Area with surrounding properties zoned low density residential R12.5.
Thank you. That is clear. Is there anyone who seconds this? Councillor Ree. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Sandri. Sure. So it's just a foreshadowed motion, and just give us a gist of that. So
Yeah, there's a foreshadowed motion, which is the officer's recommendation plus an addition for a 2-storey height limit to reduce the intensity of any future development.
Sure. So you don't want a debate. You just want that as a foreshadowed. Happy with that. So I don't think there's any debate on this. So we will put that it's not supported is the motion that's up. Move Councillor Lagan, seconded Councillor Ree. I've just got one to go, I think. Councillor Sandri, just a vote. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go on to item 12.2 DS7 on page 424, Majestic Parade. Councillor Proud.
I'm also handing this over to Councillor Lagan. He's got an alternative.
Councillor Lagan, motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'm moving an alternative that is on the board. I probably need to read it to ensure that we don't have confusion. So, to pursuant to clause 68 brackets 2 of the Planning Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015, the application for a patio addition to a single house on lot 301, house number 29, Majestic Parade, Dianella, be approved subject to the following conditions. A, this approval relates to the existing patio only as highlighted on the approved plans. B, the patio roofline be modified to be set back a minimum of 0.7 metres from the street boundary. C, stormwater from all roofed and paved areas shall be collected and contained on site. Stormwater must not affect or be allowed to flow onto or into any other property or road reserve. D, the development is to comply with all aspects of the attached approved plan as dated, marked and stamped together with the requirements and annotations detailed therein by the City. The plans approved as part of this application form part of the planning approval issued. And E, the remedial works required to comply with the above conditions are to be completed within 90 days from the date of the notice of this condition approval. Reasons for change. Council forms the opinion that the existing patio does not meet the design principles of clause 5.1.2 street setback for the residential design codes. Increasing the setback of the patio to 3 metres from Majestic Parade will ensure the patio contributes and is consistent with the established residential streetscape.
Thank you. Just in your, sorry, this is the first time I've seen this. Can we just get clarification to make sure? B, it says the patio roof line be modified to a minimum setback of 0.7 metres, but in the reason you say 3 metres. Well, it's a significant difference. So you've got 0.7 in B, and then in the reason, when you read it out, you said that you want it set back to 3 metres to comply.
Well, that is correct, but can we just get some comment from Mr Roddick?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The reason should reflect the condition B, which requires that the patio roof line be set back 0.7 of a metre from Majestic Parade.
No.
There's only a modification to the roof line in this
I just want to get clarification so it's consistent. Are you happy with that, Councillor Lagan? And second?
If I can second it, but can I ask the mover if Councillor Lagan's prepared to put 120 days instead of 90 days for the last condition, noting it's Christmas and New Year coming up?
You can. Councillor Lagan, he's happy with that, so that can be changed to 120 days. Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. Councillors, is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree, Councillor Lagan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. There's been a fair amount of debate and discussion about the item, both at committee, off committee and through a number of questions. A complex item and a number of the elected members had visited the site. Essentially, we're having a discussion about a built form and relate to setback within the suburb area. For those that did visit on site, this is not an imposing structure that's out of place. There may be some issues with the process for the built form and how the owner went about the built form, but as all elected members are aware, the owner themselves approached the city with regard to this. By imposing the condition that we have the roof setback shortened, I think we have addressed the major issue of the street visibility and also whether or not it fits in the streetscape itself and the design or deemed to comply. Obviously, on first read, for me, there was a number of issues with this, but following the discussions, following visiting the site, and taking into account that we are attempting to get an outcome that does follow the owner approaching the city with issues and ensuring that they were trying to become compliant, I think we are in a position to approve this with the modification that we've listed in this alternative recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lagan, for the amendment. In terms of this application, ordinarily I would not be supportive of a patio with effectively a nil setback to the front street boundary. However, in this instance, the council back in 99 or 98 established a new streetscape for Majestic Parade, which was to have a garage at a nil setback on Majestic Parade. Now, the city's officers, in their view, under the design principles, which are subjective, believe that the application should be refused. Now, when the officers assess the application, they're required to assess it against 4 design principles, which I'll run through shortly. But the first one suggests that something needs to be consistent with an established streetscape. Well, the officers suggest on page 431 that the streetscape is open and there are front gardens, etc. What it doesn't specifically state is that there is a garage that sits at a nil setback to the street. You cannot ignore the garage. The garage exists and it's going to exist there in perpetuity until the house is demolished and the lot is redeveloped. So on that premise, it has established a place in that streetscape. In addition to that, council resolved to approve the garage with an outdoor living area above it. By virtue of having an outdoor living area above it, naturally one would think they could put a patio on top. Now, the landowner did that, rightfully or wrongfully, and actually came to the city and said, my bad, I didn't realise I needed a planning application, I'm now applying for a retrospective. Upon reviewing the site and the streetscape, it is very clear there are solid walls, there is a garage wall that is very high, that fronts the street, and there is a patio that is open on all 4 sides, outside of sitting next to the house, that is open. You can't see it. There is landscaping to the nth degree in the front of it, so I'm not entirely sure how it is not consistent with the streetscape that this council already established back in 98-99 with a nil setback to a garage. The second design principle is to provide adequate privacy and open space for dwellings. Well, this does exactly that. It provides an area of open space and outdoor living area for the dwelling. You can argue the lot size is large. You can argue they have a tennis court, but at the end of the day, it meets the design principle with respect to providing additional outdoor living area. The third design principle is to accommodate site planning requirements such as parking, landscaping and utilities. Well, that's already achieved through the garage itself and insofar not relevant for a patio. And 4 is to allow safety clearances for any utilities there may be. Again, not relevant in this situation because it is a patio. So based on the design principles of the R-codes in which this council, in which the officers are required to assess it against, it can be determined to be approved, such as the recommendation put forward. It's not a black and white situation. I'm suggesting as a ward councillor who understands that streetscape, and I appreciate many of you have attended Majestic Parade, and we appreciate that and an understanding of what that means. However, the patio in our view, and particularly in my view, does not detrimentally impact the streetscape. In fact, the garage does, the patio doesn't, and the garage is approved. So I'm not entirely sure how we're going to say now we have not established a streetscape for this particular property with a nil setback garage and not allow the patio above it. So for those reasons, I encourage the councillors to support this recommendation. I really don't feel that we should be spending any money in the tribunal process, but if that is the case, that will be the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. I'd like to foreshadow the officer's recommendation on 426 refusing the application for the following reasons.
Noted.
I don't think there's necessary to take any more time up tonight. I think there has been enough emails going backwards and forwards of which the staff have adequately answered all the questions and have still come back to the thing of refuse it. So I think that that's what's important. The staff have said to refuse it. The staff have come back and with each of the comments and said it still should be refused. I do believe that some of the conditions that are set here is just going to change the face of it. We just talked about parking and car parking and people who don't know the neighbourhood and do know the neighbourhood and people who complain. I think when we look at, in this application itself, when we look at how many people did not agree to some of the issues that are raised. So I don't think there's
Point
any
of
more
order,
I can
Mr
say.
Mayor.
That's all right.
There is
no,
no
refused.
There's no point of order.
objections to the application.
That's right.
By phone, thanks.
All right. Yeah. No, it's fine. So I don't think there's any other debate on this. Is there? Yes, you can.
Because I'm just quite curious, through you, Mr Chair. The officers have prepared a report. I understood with the nil setback, which, yes, it's on top of a garage with a nil setback. But then I hear the councillor across giving the this additional, what was it, 0.7 metres from the street boundary. Can I ask the director, was that considered as part of their report, or is this now something that's additionally just come tonight to the meeting?
This has come tonight through the councillors. The officers were clear that their recommendation is there, but I'll get Mr Rodich.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Farrelly and councillors, through negotiation with this application, the officers have discussed opportunity to modify the existing structure with the applicant. We go through that process to see if there's any opportunity for the owner to modify that patio, just to remove some of that bulk off the street, off Majestic Parade. In our discussions with the applicant, there was no appetite to modify the proposal, and the choice was to submit the application to council as is, and that's noted in the planning report. This alternate motion has come forward tonight through discussions with elected members.
Councillor Farrelly?
Yes, I would further like to ask, if this comes to the officers, would that therefore be seen in a different light? That we have the 0.7 metre from the street boundary setback?
So it's not going to officers, this is going to council now for your determination. You've got the report in front of you. This is decision time. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? If not, Councillor Lagan, do you wish to close?
Yeah, just quickly, Mr Mayor. Look, clearly, and I said in my initial opening that when I first read the report, I was of the same view that this be refused. I went out on site, I've looked at the documentation, I've read the documentation, I've had some discussion about the rigidity of planning laws and rules. I sent elected members a video, and what was of great interest was a number of elected members who visited the site said they actually couldn't find the patio. When they went to see it, it's very difficult to see. It's well covered by foliage, it's well set back, it's well designed. It may not necessarily, in the first instance, have met the rules, but we are allowed to form an opinion to allow some flexibility, and that's exactly what this is doing. Let's be honest, if there was no coverage and this was in a different setting and was very imposing, I would argue that it's not anyway, we might be having a different debate, but I think this does allow us to take into consideration the fact that it is not a very imposing structure, and as Councillor Sandry said, the council has already put itself in a position where it previously passed a garage carport that has a zero setback from the street. I don't want to put us in a position where we're going to have to debate that into the future.
Thank you, Councillor. And that closes debate. Moved Councillor Lagan, seconded Councillor Sandry, noting there is a foreshadowed officer's recommendation. I'll put that to the vote. Thank you. And that motion is carried with myself, Councillor Ree and Councillor Perkov voting against, other councillors voting for. I will now go to item 12.2, CF3, outcomes of the public advertising for the Economic and Tourism Development Strategy 466. Councillor Proud as chair of the committee.
I'm happy just to go straight to the alternative as listed in the white paper.
Yep, let it be referred. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that as a procedural? Councillor Ree has seconded that. As a procedural, let it be held over. I will put that to a vote. Yes. Yes. For just show of hands, councillors. That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now go to the balance of reports. Councillor Proud.
The balance of planning and development reports.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Farrelly. And show of hands, councillors. I'll put that to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. Members of the gallery and those at home, please be advised the remainder of the P&D recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution. We'll move on to item 13. Reports for consideration in accordance with section 4.24 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law. First one, 13.1, Heritage Advisory Group Review of Terms of Reference. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Ree.
Yes, thank you. I've got a alternative motion.
Yep.
That the council retains the Heritage Advisory Group with the terms of reference contained in attachment 3 and authorises the Chief Executive Officer with the approval of the Mayor to accept the nominations received to the group.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Farrelly. I will put... Oh, is there anyone opposed? Sorry. I better do the... Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. I wasn't trying to cut it short. I was just to almost have it. Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Ree.
I think there's been plenty of discussion over the years, especially 2 years ago when I put up to not can it then. So it's been on the agenda several times. I have been a member, I was on the advisory committee before I even became a councillor over 20 years ago. That's were the days, and I think the comment made by one of the ratepayers here tonight was, should be summarising for councillors who don't know anything about heritage or don't follow it, that it used to be...
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
I find that statement a little bit, well, almost humorous, given that
Councillor Reid, just sit down for a
elected
sec.
members that are in heritage.
Yeah, thank you. You can take a seat. Councillor Reid, just be careful and be careful who you look at when you say that, because you probably look at the wrong councillors.
I wasn't
Now,
looking at a councillor, I was
it came
looking
across.
at
I know it came across like
ratepayer.
that. Yeah. Okay, come on, look this way. Let's go.
The fact is that it was a really great committee, and things did go to that committee, and we had a lot of experts at that committee, and it's already been established tonight we don't have a resident heritage person, and every time we pay a consultant it costs us more money. So the whole idea of the Heritage Committee was to get the anything that related to heritage. It was looked at, we discussed it, we made comments up to council, up to the staff. Whether they took them on or not didn't matter. The fact is that you had another set of eyes, and the most important things, you had local eyes that knew the history, people like Barry Baker, etc., that you couldn't get more expertise than him. So I think it's important to keep it in there. And also, it's not only about the heritage of a couple of suburbs, because if we're going to retain the heritage area, it's only important that we should actually be supporting a heritage group. It's like sitting there saying, well, let's destroy the wetlands because we're not going to have an environment group. I mean, these community groups...
It's not like that at all.
I don't know. These community groups, I'll talk about the Nookanbarra stream later. All these groups are really, really important, and it also gives an opportunity for the expertise in the community to be listened to and the locals to realise what's going on. We can't be across everything, even though some people may or may think they are or don't want to, whether it's officers, councillors or the public, it doesn't matter. The thing is that we've got an opportunity to have people at our fingertips. It worked really well in the past. There hasn't been a meeting. They haven't been inviting people, and you can't sit there and say it doesn't work when it's not there.
Yep.
It's nice that you've carried me up. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I'm looking...
Like others?
but I'm looking at what the actual item is. Let's not overdo this, yeah? Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you, councillors. Look, it's really an opportunity for us to get experts and community who are interested across the city. And I don't think we actually have a heritage awareness in a number of places in the city. And over the 33 years I've lived in Scarborough, there's been a huge demolition of buildings. But I came from Doubleview, and the Birkengainer houses of that, what do you call the 1960s, the austerity houses that were white and pink. We have none of them really left. And that's
Councillor Farrelly,
that's part of the heritage.
At the risk of cutting debate short,
Okay,
it is
sorry,
now quarter
I
to
can
8.
go on.
I just think, have a look at this item. It is whether we retain the Heritage Advisory Group. We don't need a history lesson of each suburb.
Oh, okay.
Let's just go to the point of...
Yes. Why do we need it? It is for reasons like that. It means that we don't lose heritage without having a discussion, come to council, so we as councillors can use that as an avenue to say yes or no. And I think if we start destroying those community-embedded opportunities, we will actually start to see real change happening and not notice it. And there was an article in the Age or something just recently, a guy's talking about how Melbourne has changed and they're all noticing it in COVID. They're walking through streets, and if you know Melbourne, they've lost a lot of their Georgian architecture in the suburbs because people haven't thought that was worth retaining. You get rid of enough of it, you lose that character, and you don't enjoy it in the same manner you used to. Thank you. And that's why you need a group like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Sandri.
Thank you. I'd like to firstly foreshadow the officer's recommendation.
Sure.
Look, I'm going to try and keep this very brief, or I can actually give you a history lesson about Inglewood if you like, which is a heritage protection area. No, I'm only joking.
You could do it on the committee if you let it stay. So keep going.
Funny, Mr. Mayor. No, but in terms of the Heritage Advisory Group, honestly, this has come to council umpteen times in the last 4 years, with the officers consistently asking this council to remove it and disband it. And it's not because of the lack of interest regarding the Heritage Advisory Group, but it's actually the lack of interest, I think, of the advisory group in terms of what it wants to do and what it should do. I think part of the reason is, and I can only talk on behalf of the HPA areas because I know them well, but let's say, for example, we had the HPA modification to Inglewood recently that came to council. Instead, we leverage off the Mount Lawley Historical Society for comments and contribution, and also the public. Like, we had over 500 submissions from residents. I actually feel like that is more worthy than a small group of people, you know, potentially having their views over a policy. I think it's, if we have the ability to engage the same way that the planning team successfully did with the HPA policy amendments for Inglewood on every occasion for heritage processes, then I think that will far outweigh any working group that we have. True. With respect to the advice from experts in the field, I do note that the city does have a heritage planning officer. Whether they're qualified or not, I'm not sure. However, I do know specifically that they deal with heritage properties that are in the City of Stirling when DAs come through. In addition to that, we have a design review panel that is required by the state government.
Councillors.
We have a design review panel that's required by the state government and that this council also implemented that has a number of heritage architects on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the city's officers can utilise the DRP members at their disposal to also get feedback, and I believe they did that for the HPA and Inglewood area policy as well, and no doubt we'll probably go through the same process with any future heritage listing of properties. In addition to that, we also use consultants. There is a budget in the budget that we approve as council that we use for heritage consultants. And this enables us to be able to get the best expertise on certain properties. Not every 2 properties are the same. An Iwanoff is not the same to a Californian bungalow. And a Federation is not the same as an austerity. And often you need different consultants to review different things, etc. So by no means am I suggesting that I am against heritage. I live in a heritage house in the HPA area, but I think we are better served putting our energy into actually consulting the community properly, engaging the experts and getting a broader consensus on items as opposed to the advisory group, which is clearly not working because it's been coming to us for the last 4 years umpteen times.
Thank you. And if there's no other indication, Councillor Reid, you need to close debate.
Well, I'd just like to say the reason it keeps coming back is because it's not being used. That's the whole point. And we've just made the comment, along with members of the public, which I won't look at, that it wasn't used properly, and it's been downgraded for whatever reason. Whether they don't like the community making a comment, I don't know. But what I'm saying, it is important. Let's just get the City of Stirling to pay more people on the design review panel that are all planners, all got one fixed thing, helping each other, etc. And I don't really think that that's a really good thing when we've got so many locals that do a great job. And they also makes the community feel that they're part of it. They're empowered by knowing that there are people of their same ilk looking at heritage. So I think it's very disappointing that a council would not consider an advisory group as an important thing to have. Thank you.
With that closes debate. So move Councillor Ree and second to Councillor Farrelly to retain it, with a foreshadowed to not retain it. So I'll put the motion first. This is to retain it. And that motion is lost with for Councillor Farrelly, Olo, Reid, Thornton and myself, and against Councillor Criado, Hatton, Kristovich, Lagan, Perkoff, Proud, Sundry and Sargent. I will now go to item 13.2, the e-rideable trial. Councillor Sundry, your motion.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Sorry.
Wasn't it? Oh, sorry, have I done it the wrong way around? Oh, sorry. Yes, no, yep. I read it wrong. So
I would like to move the foreshadowed motion, which is that the council disbands the Heritage Advisory Group and the city continues to engage with the community on heritage matters in a targeted way as required. I so moved.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Proud, and I will put that motion. Okay, I think we're missing one. Are we Councillor Farrelly or Criado? Sorry, what did I say? Yep, Criado. That's it. That motion is carried with the opposite vote. So we'll now move on to item 13.2, the e-rideable trial. Councillor Sundry.
I would like to ask for an extension of time up front. No, I'm joking.
I know.
I know, I actually have. Haven't you missed me at council? Can I please move? Actually, was there an alternative? Yes, can I please move the alternative?
It's your motion.
Yes, the alternative recommendation, please.
Yep. Just with those extra bits in it.
Would you like me to say what they are?
Nope, Councillor Sargent seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? You can... Is it something simple that we can have a look at?
Yes, it is actually, because I've been talking to the Director of Infrastructure and then I realised we haven't got a...
No, you don't get to debate this. Just what do you want to add?
I want to add that footpaths in the pilot program, East or West Coast Highway, be upgraded to a safety standard to accommodate the safe movement of e-ridables and pedestrians prior to these roads being included in this pilot study. And the reason I say that is because of my experience, and thank you, is the mover and seconder willing to take the...
Are you... Sorry, can I please read it again? It's just to say that to ensure that the footpaths are appropriate, essentially. No, it's safe. Yeah, well, appropriate, safe, yeah. The intent is very clear, Councillor Farrelly. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. The intent is very clear. Let's not put e-ridables on dangerous footpaths, yeah. Sure, is there anyone opposed? No, then I'll put that. I will put that motion. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Council 13.3, Local Government Act submission on proposed reforms. Councillor Farrelly, you've got an alternative.
Act, thank you. 1995, submission on proposed reforms be referred to an elected member workshop to be held on a date prior to the council meeting on the 15th Feb 2022 to allow elected members to fully understand the submission, the impacts of the reform on their roles and their interactions with the community, and refine the feedback. And this is given that the Minister's recent extension to the submission deadline.
Thank you. And Councillor Lagan has seconded that. Just to, for those who don't know, we only received the notice from the Minister late this afternoon, so it's very recent. Up to then it was time sensitive. Now there is time, so there's no hurry to do this. If there's no one opposed, I will put that. Well, it's a procedural anyway, isn't it? Thanks, councillors. That is unanimous. We'll now go on to notice of motions for consideration. 14.1, Councillor Kristovich. Your motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll read out my notice of motion that a report be presented to Council about the following matter: that the City completes a post-opening road safety assessment of traffic and parking issues for the roads immediately surrounding the Karrinyup Shopping Centre, including Karrinyup Road, Francis Avenue, Burrows Road and Davenport Street.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Farrelly. What's your quick question?
Was there a base study completed prior to the opening of Karrinyup Shopping Centre?
Mr Littleton.
We've got certainly traffic statistics that will assist us to provide a comprehensive.
So I'll put that motion. Thank you. We've got Councillor Ree. Your vote.
Couldn't hear me.
That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 14.2, Councillor Ree.
Yes, thank you. That as part of the council's support for sustainability and recycling projects, that the city engages in a partnership with organisations such as Tread Lightly for the collection and recycling of second-hand shoes. A report on how this can be established to be presented to the February 2022 Community Resource Committee meeting.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Farrelly. Is there anyone opposed? Can I ask a question from the chair through officers? Is this something that we need a report and officers' time to come back, or can it just be done, or is it something we'd likely do? Is that? I know we've got partnerships with other organisations. That's all.
I think the context of the report is that it's not something we would likely do. We would need to prepare a report on it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I'll put that motion, councillors. That motion is carried. I'll just, with Councillor Crowdo, Farrelly, Kristovich, Olo, Proud, Ree, Sargent and Thornton for, Councillor Hatton, Lagan, Perkoff, Sandri and myself against. 14.3, proposed notice of motion, Councillor Ree.
Thank you. That a report be presented to council about the following matter: that as part of the City of Stirling commitment to the arts and local talented, especially in the face of COVID, that council agrees to establish the City of Stirling Music Awards to enable the local musical talents within the city to be recognised and displayed. These awards would take place in a similar way to the City of Stirling Art Awards.
And is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Sandri. I'll put that motion. Councillor Proud, thank you. That is unanimous. 14.4, this is Councillor Migdale's motion. I believe Councillor Sandri might be.
Thank you. Happy to move the recommendation on page 566.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan seconded. And I'll put that motion. Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Are we distinguishing whether we're just going to be focusing on public schools, or is it going to include private schools as well?
If I can comment.
Yeah, let's see if Councillor Sandri.
Yeah, I believe the intention is public schools because there are shared overall schemes between local governments and public schools, generally not appropriate with the private school setting.
Yeah, and that's not to say in future we can't, but this particular motion was about that. So there's, yeah. And I will now put that motion. That is unanimous. And we have 14.5, Councillor Farrelly. It'll be up on the board.
Thank you, through Mr Chair. That a report be presented to Council outlining the cost, potential fee and practicality of providing a sea container at Brighton Reserve for use by Perth Go Surf. And B is, or enclosing a portion, specifically the southwest quadrant of the current Brighton Reserve public toilet facility for use by Perth Go Surf. Just want to add Perth Go Surf. I've sent an email around. They're doing a lot of...
Save it for the debate when it comes back.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Is there a seconder? Councillor Christovich?
Yeah.
I'll put that motion, councillors. Thanks, councillors. That is unanimous. We'll now move on to item 15, questions on notice, which are in the minutes. Item 16, new business of an urgent nature. I've nil. Item 17, matters behind closed doors. Councillor, can I have a motion to go behind closed doors? Councillor Lagan, seconded Councillor Farrelly. A show of hands, councillors. Thank you. We'll now go behind closed doors for the last meetings. To those members in the gallery, if you are welcome to come back up. show of hands, councillors. That is unanimous. If we can open the doors, please. Is there anyone out there that we're waiting for? All right, so no one's coming back in. So that brings us to item 18, closure. I now declare the last council meeting of the year closed at 8:08 p.m. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Good night to those viewers at home. Merry Christmas.